problem is that you're giving somebody your identity and you have no idea what they're going to do with it after that. So, I mean, they could sell it. They could, you know, open up credit accounts in your name. I mean, but the real problem is, I mean, when you go a step further, right? Why are we taking the test to begin with? Well, right, to keep who safe? Yeah, we're keeping grandma safe, right? That's what it's all about. So what is the use of paying somebody else to take your test for you if you're the one that's actually got to go do the work? You know, no, it doesn't make any sense, but people don't think beyond the test. That's the problem. Everybody thinks that, you know, you go take the test, you get certified and money just like shows up. It doesn't really work that way. Yeah, I wish so. Yeah, absolutely. I wish that's how it worked, but it doesn't. So developing those realistic expectations is part of the class. But remember, a lot of people don't take a class. They just challenge the state exam. So yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So Becky, what did you have? Okay.
Only able to process your testing application and receive this for the following reasons. Since your supporting documents are under review.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And I keep trying to tell them, but it's like
they're very, yeah, they're a very difficult company to get a hold of, to work with. They're very, very difficult. I wish I could tell you otherwise, but I can't. They're just not user friendly at all. So it sounds like maybe there was something with your application, you know, when you submitted your application. Sounds like there was something that went unusual with it. So you'll need to call, just stay on hold. I know you'll be on hold for a long time.
2 hours yesterday.
Yeah, you have to just call and stay on hold. If you call back, you're losing your place in line. Something that most people don't understand is Prometric doesn't just do CNA testing. Prometric does testing for construction, for computers, for real estate, I mean, they do 400 different certification exams across multiple industries. Okay, so you are this little itty bitty teeny tiny sliver of a pie. Now, we don't think that. We think, you know, Prometric, it should be all about me, right? I'm testing, it should be all about me. But CNA, and they do CNA testing in 14 states, so they're not just in Florida. So when you call, they've got 14,000 other calls, somebody calling about construction certification, somebody calling about a real estate certification, somebody calling about a CNA in Texas, you know, so you are just one up. Their call center is staffed with minimum wage individuals, and their entire job is to get you off the phone. That is their entire job. They have a little book that has answers to quite frequently asked questions. So you call up and say, you know, I got this email. They flip to that page in the book and they're going to read to you what that says. That's not going to be overly helpful because their whole job is to get you off the phone. So they're going to read you something like, well, you have to wait 90 days to be cleared. Well, it has nothing to do with your situation. They're just reading a canned response that has nothing to do with you. And they're designed to get you off the phone. So you got to get past that call center. To do that, you need to ask for a supervisor, somebody that can access your specific account. Those call center people can't. So you need to hold, you've got to ask for a supervisor, and you've got to get to somebody who can actually look up your, your account. They're not easy to work with. As long as you don't have to contact them, everything runs pretty smooth. But they get an average of 20,000 calls a day. I mean, that's, you're trying to compete with 19,999 other individuals that are trying to get through. So it's quite a feat. Now, the simple answer is, well, why don't they hire more staff? Right? That's what we all think. Why don't they hire more staff? How much are you paying for your exam? $155. How many evaluators are there? 2. Do evaluators work cheap?
No.
Okay, so about $130 of that $155 goes to the evaluators. Now they also have to pay for the location that you're testing in. Is rent, electric, phone, insurance, and all that cheap? Okay, so they have to pay $20 of that $155 to the testing place. So they only have maybe on a good, and they have to pay for the infrastructure, right? The website, all of the programming that works inside the website and all of that. So they have maybe $1 left for call center employees. Maybe. So the answer, why don't they hire more staff? Well, do you want to pay more for your evaluation? So you got to hold. Does that make sense? Okay, not the answer you wanted, I know, but that is reality. And I'm all about giving you realistic expectations. That's my job. Make sense? Okay. So do you guys have any questions on your homework? You read chapter 7 over the weekend? Or over the week, sorry. We're not at the weekend yet. It's Wednesday. I am. Yeah, I am so totally off on my days this week. I'm like all mixed up. All right, Tina, how did you do on chapter 7? Okay. Marissa? Thank you. Celeste? Finette? Still not here. Rebecca?
1.
Christine? Dilcia?
1.
Alexandra? Jillian? Jillian, do you have 5 and 6 for me?
I'm 5 at 1 now, and I'm 6 at 2.
Thank you. Melcora?
I got 1 roll. Chapter 6, I got 2 roll.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Caitlin? All right, did I call everybody? Okay. Melcora, are you doing okay? I know that unfortunately because of my fault that you weren't able to join the first week. Are you doing okay? Are you
Everything is fine. I'm good.
Good.
I'm always watching the news.
Okay. If you have any problems, please make sure you get in touch with me, okay? Either stay after or whatever, because I want to make sure. And that was totally my fault. I got the dates mixed up. I told her the wrong date. So if you and I've been meaning to talk to you about this. So if you have any problems, please make sure you let me know.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So everybody else good? Am I going too fast for anybody? Am I going too slow? All right. You guys are at the home stretch now. There's only 1 more week of class left. That's it. 2 days. I told you it goes fast, doesn't it? It goes really fast. This is, we're kind of wrapping up the skills. So we have 3 skills to learn today. So this is going to be your first classroom practice day. where we really have a lot of time in class to be able to practice the skills that we've learned. So you will probably have about an hour and a half of practice time at the end of today's class, maybe a little bit more. We'll see how long-winded I get. But you'll have some practice time in class today. And then on Monday, you're going to have quite a bit of practice time, about 2 hours. So you're able to kind of put into practice what you've learned. Now, please remember, you do have this classroom available on Mondays and Wednesdays up until 4 o'clock. After you graduate, it's from 1:30 until 4. Now, the reason that I do that, it's actually kind of important. You guys are here until 1, and you would feel very uncomfortable, very rushed if at like 12:45 people started lining up outside this door to get in here. You know, especially in your first week. Remember how nervous you were in the first week, not really knowing what to expect. You didn't know your classmates. You were kind of like out in left field. You don't really want a whole bunch of strangers lined up to try to get into this room. That would make you feel a little more uncomfortable. That's why I have it set up the way I do. So that gives a half-hour buffer between the end of class and when my graduating people can come in and practice. That way my current students don't feel that kind of extra pressure. Does that sound fair? Okay, now you are able to come in here a month after graduation and practice. Some students get a little upset at that. Well, what if it takes me longer than a month to test? What, you know, I can't come in and practice then? And the answer is I take that on a case-by-case basis. The reason that I didn't used to limit it, and you could come in anytime. You could have taken my class 6 years ago and come back and test, you know, decide you need to test. And I have that happen all the time. I just had an email yesterday from somebody who took my class about 8 years ago, never took the test, and now they want to test. Well, the problem is if you're here practicing, right, and you're still in school, in class, and that person from 8 years ago comes in, do you think they're going to remember anything I said?
No.
So you're here practicing, so they're going to be asking you a ton of questions. Like, you know, when you're washing your hands, does that time include the nails? She said you can't shake your hands. What else? I can't remember. What do you do? They're going to be asking you a ton of questions. And that puts you in a position where now you're not able to practice. You're trying to teach. And that's not fair to you. You're here to practice. That's why I have that cutoff time. Okay. Most of you should be testing within a month after graduation. Probably sooner if you register, you know, when, you know, anytime last week, this week. But that's why I have it capped off at a month. If you come back to me in 2 months and say, hey, situations happened, I wasn't able to test, or they made a mistake on my application and I got delayed, that's fine. I'll let you in. That's not a big deal. Okay. So I can play with that time frame a little bit. But if you come to me in 6 months and say, hey, I just didn't go test, now I want to use your room, I'm going to say, I'm sorry. I have to protect my current students. Does that sound fair? Because right now you guys are the ones being protected. Okay. So it's unfortunate that I have to put these policies in place, but I do. And I always have a reason for the policies I put in place. They're usually to protect my current group, which is you right now. All right. So anybody have any other questions before we move on? Anything that you don't understand, anything you need clarification on, anything you're confused about? No? Pretty good? All right. We are moving on. Today, we have 3 skills to learn. Now, 2 of them are going to be kind of a rehashing of skills we already know. So we're going to take the principles that we know and apply them to a new situation. One of them is completely different and doesn't follow any of our rules. And that's where we're going to start today. We're going to start with feeding. So if you turn to page 75 in your book, how do we know what to do with each patient? Care plan. So the care plan at the top of page 75 tells us to feed the resident a snack who is unable to feed him or herself. The resident is sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating, and we have to document the intake on a food and fluid intake form. That sounds like a pretty straightforward care plan, but I'm going to break this down for you because there's some things in here that you probably didn't pay attention to. Number one, it says feed the resident a snack. This is not a full meal. This is a snack. So for the test, a snack is a single serve pudding or applesauce cup. That is what's considered a snack. If you look at the bottom of the page, you can see that this is a live person skill. That means that you may be the person being fed a snack. Hi, come on in. So if you're the person being fed, you're going to get very specific instructions. Remember I said on day one that we, go ahead, you're fine, you're fine. No, you're fine. That when we have to play the role of the resident, we get a script to follow. You guys remember that? We get a script. Okay, so part of what you're going to be told for this particular skill is to only take 4 bites and then say you're done. No matter what the CNA tries to do, just quit eating after 4. You can be nice, but don't take anything else after 4. So the patient's going to get very specific instructions. So the care plan says to feed the resident a snack. You're going to be the patient for this, for somebody else to feed you. You're only going to take 4 bites. So this is not like a long skill, 4 bites. Now, when you're feeding somebody else, now, if I'm eating at home, I fill that spoon, right? I'm going to get as much to my mouth as quickly as possible because I am hungry. But when you're feeding somebody else, we don't fill the spoon. The spoon should only be half full. Should never be overflowing. Should only be half full because we have no idea how much effort that patient is going to have to use to eat. Remember I said last class, we talked about energy conservation. And I said, anytime strength goes down, effort has to go up. Remember that? Remember we said that it requires energy for everything, including eating. So when we're feeding, particularly elderly people, they're not going to eat the way we eat. We eat big spoonfuls as quick as we can, get it done. But the act of eating actually takes a lot of energy because when you put food in your mouth, you have to produce saliva. You've got to chew that food. Your tongue has to push it this way and that way to make sure that it's all kind of crunched up really good before you swallow it. If you don't do that, if you try to swallow food before it's ready, you could choke. Now, if we don't have much energy, we know eating takes energy. And we know that as we age, different things get affected, like we're not going to produce as much saliva. Our muscles, our jaw muscles, our tongue muscles are going to kind of decrease in strength. So feeding the elderly becomes way different than feeding ourselves. So we're only going to fill the spoon half full. Make sense? So you're only giving 4 half full spoonfuls. That's it. It's like hardly anything. So this is not a long skill. Now, the state test is saying that somebody with your level of experience should be able to feed somebody 4 bites of food within 9 minutes. Please don't rush this. Okay, this is you got all the time you need. All you're giving is 4 half bites of food, right? But there's a lot more that goes into this skill beyond feeding. Everybody gets stuck on that, feed the resident a snack. What I'm about to tell you goes what they're testing you on goes way beyond that. So as far as feeding goes, that's what they're looking at. Is the spoon half full? Are you giving them time to chew and swallow? Because remember, it's going to take them longer. Are you going to make sure that, you know, they're ready for the next spoonful before you present it? So that's what they're going to be grading on as far as the actual feeding mechanics go. Good. All right, now the next part of the care plan is one of the most important parts. It says, feed the resident a snack, somebody who's unable to feed him or herself. So we're going to do the work, but it says the resident is sitting in a chair, just like me, in an inappropriate position for eating. You want to underline that word inappropriate. Because chances are you'll just skip right over that word when you get to the test. No care plan out there in clinical life is going to give you this information. The only reason it's here for the test is because it's a graded checkpoint. It's telling you, hey, this patient is not sitting up straight. What are you going to do about it? It's giving you that clue. Now, in a clinical setting, you better be looking at the patient to see, are they in an inappropriate position? So remember I said you're going to get a script when you're the patient. So let's say you're a patient for this skill, you're going to be told to either slump over or slouch down, okay? So when I say slump over, I mean something like this, okay? Or slouch down, something like this. I mean, you really want to be exaggerated at this. But some people aren't going to do that. They're just going to do something like, yeah, I don't know if this isn't, I've seen 10-year-olds eat like this. I'm not so sure that's an inappropriate position for eating, right? So if you see somebody in this position, it may not trigger your brain that you have to ask them to sit up. Does that make sense? That's why it's on the care plan. Because no matter what your patient looks like to your eyeballs, the care plan is telling you they're not sitting up straight. So what do you think a huge graded checkpoint is for this skill? Yeah, getting them to sit up straight. So thankfully, we can just ask them, hey, can you sit up? You don't have to like physically prop them up, put pillows there. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is recognize it, because the care plan's telling you. I mean, you don't even have to like recognize the care plan told you, right? So you have to address it. You have to say, can you please sit up? No matter what your eyeballs are telling you, the care plan said they're not in an appropriate position. Does that make sense? So that's why I really want to draw your attention to that, because for the test, your patient may not look all that inappropriate. And you may just skip right over that. But because the care plan says it, it's part of the test. You guys understand the difference here? Okay. And then it tells us to document the intake on a food and fluid intake form. We're going to get to that in a minute. You can see the form there in the middle of the page. We're going to talk about documentation in a minute, but I want to explain why this skill is different from every other skill we do. It doesn't follow any of our normal rules. I mean, it is so far out there in left field. But let me explain why. So if you go back to page 72, I'm going to talk to you about all the ways this skill is different. I've taught you to use a barrier on the table anytime you're going to put supplies on the table. We don't use a barrier for this skill because it's the only time we're using the table for what it's supposed to be used for, eating. So we don't need a barrier. And we already have one in place. The food tray is your barrier. So when you start this skill, the patient's going to be sitting in a chair at the side of the bed with an overbed table in front of them. And on that table is going to be a food tray already prepared with a cup of water, a spoon, a napkin, and a single serve something, pudding, applesauce, whatever. It's already going to be ready on the table. You don't have to go get it. You don't have to verify diet orders. You don't have to do anything crazy. It's already there. but we don't have to put a barrier on the table to put that tray on because the tray is our barrier. So that's number one way. It's totally different. We don't use a barrier. Number two is we don't close the privacy curtain. It's the only skill that we don't close the privacy curtain for. And the reason is that eating is a social event. People gather in groups to eat. In fact, if you gather in groups, you're probably eating, right? So yesterday I had my aunt and my mother, but my aunt was visiting from South Carolina. And she and my mom came over to go in the pool. And it was just supposed to be like this little informal, they're coming in to go in the pool. I go out, get fried chicken, potato salad, coleslaw, fresh fruit, you know, and my husband's like, are we having a party? No, mom and aunt are coming. And he's like, you got a party out here. You know, I mean, you got like everything. And that's because when we socialize, we tend to eat with socialization. Think of all of the major life events in your life, right? Is there food at baby showers? Is there food at weddings? Like weddings are a big deal with food, right? Birthday parties, graduations, Father's Day, Mother's Day, 4th of July. I mean, we'll take any opportunity to eat, right? So we have to understand that eating is a social event, but let's take that one step further. Let's just talk about every day. So if you go over to Chili's at 1 o'clock, when when you're done with class, and you guys go as a group and you walk into Chili's, if you walked in there and there's 30 other couples in that facility and it's dead silent, how awkward is that? What do you expect to hear in a restaurant? Talking, eating, silverware clanking, laughing, music, right? There's lots going on. It is not dead quiet. And it would be awkward as all get out if it was. And yet in facilities, we try to feed people dead quiet. And we don't think about how awkward that is for the patient. I mean, that's awkward. So can you imagine how awkward it would be if you went out to eat and they put you in this booth and they close this curtain behind you so nobody can see you eating? That's just weird. That's weird, right? People went nuts when they just put up clear dividers in between booths, and that you can still see, right? But that you felt confined. That's just weird, right? So when you have a patient in a room that you're feeding and you pull that curtain, you have blocked off all socialization, and you're going to make them feel weird. Are they going to eat? Probably not. You made it weird. Don't make it weird. Okay, so we don't close the privacy curtain. This is the only skill that you're graded on having a conversation. Now, the rest of the skills, we can get away with telling them what we're doing. I'm going to lift your arm above your head and bring it back down to the bed. Or I'm going to put this gait belt around your waist and stand you up. You know what? You're telling the steps. This skill, you're not telling steps. You're not going to say, I'm going to put some pudding on the spoon and bring it to your mouth. I mean, that's demeaning. So for this skill, you're not going to tell them every step of the way what you're doing. You are going to have a real conversation. And you don't know this person. It's not like a real setting, so you can make something up for the test. You can say, they're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room later. Do you want to go see it? You know, I think it's going to be like Casablanca. I've never seen that movie. Or you can make up, did you see those little kids come in for that Easter egg hunt? Weren't they adorable? Oh, I love the one in pigtails. Make something up. Okay. But you need to have a conversation. Now, when I'm talking with real people, there's a couple of questions I have in my bag of tricks that I usually ask. People generally will talk about themselves. All they need is an opening. So what I usually do is ask, I have a couple questions, but the first one I usually start out with is, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? It's not overly personal, right? But most people have some travel story, something that they can talk about. And most people have more than one something. Like if you ask me, I would probably say, well, I went to London and, talk about that. But, probably my most memorable trip was when I was 16 and drove cross country with my best friend and my parents, cramped into a little car in the middle of July with no AC. That was a trip. And man, I could talk for hours about that trip. Right? So I've got several options that I can kind of cycle through, and so do you. So when you ask people what's the most exciting place you've ever been, it gives you a lot of opportunity for conversation. And, people will say, well, you can't talk while you're eating. Yes, you can. You do it all the time. When you're in Chili's, you take a bite and chew while somebody else is talking. And then they take a bite and chew when you respond. You talk while you're eating. You just don't talk with your mouth full. There's a difference. So yes, you need to have a conversation with the patient, but sometimes your patients will surprise you. And this is why I love this question, because I've gotten all kinds of responses. I met a man who was knighted by the Queen of England. He was an actual real sir. I mean, that's amazing. Like, what was that? That's awesome. So you never know the type of answers you're going to get. But I had this one lady, she was a trip. She was in her late 90s. This is in the late 90s, okay? And I was up in Citrus County, taking care in home care, I would go into patients' homes and do wound care or whatever needed to be done. Well, this woman was in an assisted living facility and she had these horrible wounds on her legs, venous insufficiency, just big ulcers on her legs. And I had to go in, remove the dressings, clean it up, put the medication on, and then wrap it in a very specific way. It's like a 45-minute dressing change. I mean, I'm there for a while, long time. And this woman was in her late 90s. So I pull up a stool and I said, so Mabel, while we're here, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? Right? Pull out my favorite question from my bag of tricks. And her answer really surprised me. She says, oh, honey, I've never been anywhere. I said, you've never been anywhere? And she says, no, I've never left the county. You have never left Citrus? You never been to Ocala? She's like, no, never left the county. And then she stopped. She says, well, that's not entirely true. I was born in Burkesville, but I don't remember that. You've never, ever left this county? No, never left the county. Didn't see no reason to go nowhere. Everything I needed was right here. So I pulled up a chair because this is going to be one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had. This is living history. She has seen 100 years of changes with her own eyes in the same place. One of the most intriguing conversations I've ever had. She was plugged into the Inverness group, and there were two very specific groups back then. Okay, you were the Inverness group or the Christopher River group. No. She was the Inverness group, right? There were two families in Inverness that were kind of like the Hatfields and McCoys, and the son from one and the daughter from the other was supposed to get married and have, kind of blend the families, mend the rift, all of that. She took off with his best friend the day before the wedding. I mean, like, I'm telling you, this was amazing, right? Amazing storytelling. She remembers when the first paved road went into Citrus County, the first paved road. She remembers when the first McDonald's got put into Citrus County. And that was a huge deal. I mean, she was telling me all kinds of things that I had lived in Citrus County my whole life. I didn't know any of this stuff. And it was amazing. So people that think that they don't have anything to contribute are often the ones that have the best stories. So take the time to listen. Give them an opening. We have to understand, and chapter 2 went over this with you guys a little bit, Maslow's hierarchy. Remember that triangle thing that you saw? It was in chapter 2. And you probably just kind of glossed over it because it really didn't make any sense to you, right? But it talks about the needs, the level of needs, okay? And the first is like things you need to like survive, like oxygen, food, water. So just surviving. The next one is shelter, clothing, you know, things to make you a little more comfortable while you're surviving. And then you've got, you know, 3 more levels. You know, you have to have love, safety, security. You got to have meaningful work. And then you have to have self-actualization where you start to realize your goals and your dreams and, you know, feel very fulfilled in life, right? And you can't feel fulfilled in life if you're homeless because you're not safe, you're not secure, you don't feel loved, right? So this is like a way to rate needs. You have to get these needs met first before you can move here. You got to have these needs met first before you can climb up, that type of thing. Is everybody good with that? Okay, that's Maslow's hierarchy. Those of you who go on for nursing, you're going to have a whole semester learning about Maslow's hierarchy. It's way more important than I've just made it. But yeah, but we need to understand that in this hierarchy of needs, everybody has life stages that they're going through, and you have certain things that most people try to accomplish in these life stages. So like childhood, young childhood, your life stage is to learn. You're always about learning. You're watching people, you're learning, right? Teenagers, it's all about forming friendships, pure bonding. You try really hard not to fit in while you're fitting in. Okay. 20s, your life stage is all about finding a mate, starting your career, you know, kind of figuring out who you are. Okay. 30s is all about, you know, raising your family or working on your career. You usually kind of pick one, or, you know, you really focus in on one of those 2 areas. And then there's 40s and 50s and so on. Well, when you get into your 70s, your major life need, the thing that you need to do to feel that that second level from the top of Maslow's hierarchy, is all about passing on your stories. Okay, it's about reflection. It's have you ever stopped to think why you create memories? Yeah, you don't create memories for yourself. Like, when was the last time you thought about a soccer game you attended when you were 6? Those memories are not for you. Those memories are for you to pass on to others. It allows you to bond. It allows you to learn life lessons. It allows you to connect with others. That's why you have memories. Now, can you imagine accumulating an entire 70 years with memories? 70 years. Yeah, your head is packed full of memories. And your whole goal is to share them. That's what your life stage is all about. Telling others about your life experiences. And yet you can't find a single person willing to sit down and listen. How frustrated do you think that you would be if this is your entire life stage and nobody's willing to cooperate? How frustrated do you think you'll be? Yeah, so this is why we get a lot of very bitter older people. Because nobody's willing to listen to their memories, their experiences. So this is the perfect time to do that. You need to be asking them questions about their lives. Trust me, they're not going to pull out their dark skeletons in the closet. You can keep it light. But some of them may need to talk about those dark skeletons in the closet. they're getting close to the end of their road and they may need some things off their chest. Absolutely. But these are things that we can do to help them progress through their life stages. Now, I keep it light. I don't want to know about those skeletons. No, you have no idea. And I have heard some very strange stories.
And then it's like you don't want to be uncomfortable around them. You have to give them care.
Yeah. Well, probably the saddest one I ever heard, and this one stuck with me for a very long time. And I was taking care of this older woman. And she says, my sister's coming today. I said, oh, how nice. It's very nice that you can visit with your sister. She says, yeah, she's quite a bit younger than me. And I said, oh, yeah, she doesn't need to be in a home yet. She's much younger. And I said, well, that sounds like a very good visit. What do you guys have planned while she's here? And I'm kind of talking to her. She says, can I tell you a secret? I said, sure. She says, I haven't told anybody. Nobody knows this. And I said, okay. She says, it's not my sister. She's my daughter. And nobody knew. Nobody in the family knew. This is a secret she had, like, forever. Yeah, I think back in the day, it was frowned upon for a young woman to be pregnant outside of marriage, especially young. And a lot of times the families would take the child and raise the child as a sibling rather than.
Yeah, I have a sister. Do you know if like the daughter knew that?
I don't think anybody knew. Because she said, she says she's, yeah. So that was quite interesting. And I didn't ask for details, not my business. And I said, oh, that must be very frustrating for you to hold that secret in that long. So my focus is now, I've got this secret, right? I'm not going to go run and tell the family, did you know? I'm not going to like up in the apple cart here. So my focus is now on helping that person that just spilled that secret to me, helping her process her emotions through it. So, that must have been very frustrating for you, watching her grow up and not being able to tell her. And let her talk about, she brought it up for a reason. She brought it up. She needed to talk. So I'll give her the opportunity. And it's always good to ask open-ended questions. Things like, so how do you feel about that? That's a great question. I don't have to tell her how to feel about that. I don't have to tell her she's right or wrong and how she feels about that. All I got to do is be a living, breathing human with ears. I can do that, but that was a very interesting situation because later on in that day when her daughter did come and visit, her sister came and visited, you could see that she was much more at peace with the interactions. So I thought that was really sweet. So having a conversation is important. And mealtime is one of the best times to have conversations because you're captive audience and you want to feed slowly. So this is a good time to kind of bring out those questions. Another thing that I'll do, especially if I'm in a patient's room, long-term care settings, your patients will usually have pictures up. We don't post our deepest, darkest secrets. We only post pictures we're willing to talk about. Like if you come to my house, it's cruise pictures. I like to cruise, right? You can't miss it. I got cruise pictures. So somebody walk in my house, go, what's up with the cruising? And I'll talk about it. No problem. Give me an opportunity, right? We post things in public that we're willing to talk about. So I'll usually kind of scan the room to see what they've got. And almost always, of course, these people are, the generations are changing, but there's a picture of an older one, or a young woman, like on the wall, picture of a young woman with a man in a service uniform. And ladies, these women put us to shame. Man, they were always dressed to the nines, beautiful makeup, hair just right. I mean, they knew how to put it together. And I'll look at that. I'll look at a picture on a wall like that, and I'll go, oh my gosh, look at that couple. They're gorgeous. Were they movie stars? Did you know them? And watch her sit up a little bit taller and go, oh no, honey, that was me. Yeah. I absolutely made her day. She is now going to eat really well because she now has a little bit of self-confidence. Did not cost me a thing to make her day. And the thing is, I really meant it. These women were absolutely gorgeous. They knew how to put it together. I do not know how to put it together. I do not. I mean, I'm not wearing pajamas at Walmart. I'm not that bad, but I do not know how to put it together like these women put it together, right? So, yes. So it's important that we help promote not just the physical health of our patients, but the emotional health of our patients as well. Never forget that we're not there just to brush teeth, brush hair, clean what needs to be cleaned, make beds. Yes, those are tasks we're going to do. But we have to go a step beyond that. Why are we doing those tasks? Yeah, for the patient, to help them feel better, to help promote their health. Well, health is more than just physical. So having these conversations, making them feel good, taking the time out during these routine tasks. Don't do skills in silence. You're missing an awesome opportunity. Does that make sense? Now the test is going to go one step further and actually grade you on this. You are graded on having a conversation. So you need to have one. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a real one. You can make something up, that's fine, but you need to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a long one though. You're only feeding them 4 half spoonfuls. Not a long conversation, but make an effort. Okay, make sense? Good. Okay, so difference number 1 is we don't use a barrier. Difference number 2 is we don't pull the curtain. Difference number 3 is we're graded on conversation. Difference number 4 is you have to sit. It's the only skill that requires your butt in a chair. And that's because if you feed somebody by standing over them and feeding them, they feel rushed. They feel like they're an inconvenience and they'll quit eating. It's a balance of power dynamic here. So you never want to feed somebody standing over them. You have to pull up a chair, sit down, and make them feel like you want to be there. Don't stand over somebody. So sitting is a graded checkpoint. It's the only skill that you are required to sit that equalizes the power dynamic. Good. Now we are going to offer a clothing protector. Me, I need a clothing protector. Everything I wear goes right on my shirt. I need a clothing protector. Don't wear one in public. Don't wear one in private, but I need one. My grandmother, if you offered her a clothing protector, she would get indignant. I am not a child. So we are going to offer, your patient can deny it, they can accept it, we don't care, but we're going to offer one. What we aren't going to do is call it a bib. Okay. Would you like a clothing protector? A lot of times you can get away with this. Would you like a napkin? You know, up here. So you can use a napkin, you can use a towel, you can use a clothing protector, which looks like a bib, but we don't call them that. You can use pretty much anything to protect clothing if the patient wants it. Trust me, if you're giving them soup You want a clothing protector. I don't care how good you are. Yeah, dripping happens. Dripping happens. So we are going to offer a clothing protector. And then there's a step that really confuses students. Our care plan says the resident is unable to feed themselves. Care plan says that. But before we feed somebody, we are going to wash their hands or give them a hand wipe for them to wash their hands, but they have to have clean hands for us to feed them. So this confuses students a lot. Well, wait a minute, why do they have to wash their hands if I'm the one feeding them? Well, there's two reasons for that. Number one is ritual. Most people wash their hands before they eat. It goes into stimulating the appetite, ritual. Okay, you want to maintain those eating rituals. But the second reason is just because you're feeding them does not mean that they can't bring their hands up. And if they get food around their mouth, they will. Yeah, they'll push it right in. And you do not want dirty hands up near a mouth. So before we feed our patients, even though we're doing the work, we are going to give them a hand wipe or some way of washing their hands to make sure that the skill remains safe and hygienic. Good? Questions? Okay, so this is a little bit different than a lot of the skills that we do, right? Doesn't follow a lot of our rules. Now, we are going to offer a drink before we feed the patient, and then every 2 or 3 bites as we're feeding them. Some people drink before a meal. My aunt drank an 8-ounce glass of water before every meal. Every meal. She drank it because she said it filled her up and she ate less.
I'm gonna try it.
Yeah. I've tried it. I can't make myself do it. So it my husband doesn't drink at all. He'll eat and then drink after. Me, I got to have a drink all the way through. Everybody's different. Everybody, we don't stop and think about this, but everybody's different. So we're going to offer a drink before we start feeding. And we're going to offer a drink every couple of bites. And we're going to offer a drink at the end because we don't know where in this scenario they want to take a drink, if at all. So we're going to offer all 3 areas. This is why you are feeding 4 bites. Because somewhere in there, the test better hear you offer a drink. Yeah, 4 bites to get that in. Okay. This skill is also different because it's the only one that allows us to not argue with the patient. We're not going to argue with the patient, but we are going to encourage them not to stop. Like all other skills, the stopping point is a stopping point. We don't have to do anything else. This skill is different. This skill, when they say, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm full, no more, however I don't know how they're going to say it. Everybody's different. Whatever they say, you are going to try to change their mind. And you have to use 2 forms of encouragement for the test. 2 forms. So you don't want to just say, oh, thank God, I've got a million things to do. I thought you were taking forever. You don't want to do that. You want to use 2. I'm going to give you 3, but you have to use 2 of them. Are you sure you don't want just 1 more bite? 1 more? Offer another bite. Would you like something else from the kitchen? We've all had those days, all of us, where you're hungry, you think you want something, you go make it, and then you're like, nope, not it. That's not what I wanted. Right? We've all had those days. So maybe your patient's hungry, but the pudding isn't it, not what they're looking for. So they don't have a kitchen they can go into to rummage around the refrigerator and find it, whatever it is, right? All they have is you. So you need to offer, can I get you something else from the kitchen? Is this not quite doing it? No problem. You can also reassure them that food is available later and let me know if you get hungry. A lot of people, especially older people in their 80s and 90s, they aren't familiar with cheap and readily accessible food. We are like unbelievably spoiled in this country, unbelievably spoiled. We have fast food. I mean, not just on every corner, we have 2 or 3 on every block. You know, there is fast food available everywhere. And you probably have enough change in the bottom of your car to stop and get something to eat, even if you have no money in your wallet. Okay. Food in our community is readily accessible and cheap, just like clothing. Crazy. It wasn't like that 50 years ago. Was not like that. It definitely wasn't like that 80 years ago. So your patients may not have the memory of current times to fall back on. So they may think that whatever is in front of you is all there is. That's it. So remind them, we have food available on the unit. If you get hungry later, just let me know. Okay. You need to use at least 2 of those. Would you like one more? Can I get you something else? We have food available. Let me know if you get hungry. You have to use at least 2 of those for the test. Okay. That makes the patient feel like they're not an inconvenience, that you truly care. Even if you don't, act like you do.
It's true if we can play with
Okay. So for the test, we do not ever treat an adult like a child. So no planes, trains, or automobiles.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to tell you I've never done that in a clinical setting. There are some patients that you will find you can play around with. I use a lot of humor in my nursing, a lot of humor, because humor is the one thing that can unite people.
Yes.
So yeah, I have absolutely used airplane sounds with some of my patients, but not all of them. You have to know who you're dealing with, right? My grandmother, oh Lord, no. No, that would be a lecture that would still be going on, you know, no. But, you know, other patients that I've dealt with, absolutely, absolutely. Race cars, planes are all on the table.
If they don't want what's on their tray, do you have to inform the nurse before you give them something else?
Yes, yes. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So we truly are what we eat. We've heard that saying, but we don't really make it make sense to us. We truly are what we eat. So remember we talked about diabetes earlier in the program, where when you take in carbs, they break down into sugar, right? So if we have a diabetic patient and he doesn't want what's on his tray, and we go get him an alternate, which happens to be spaghetti, that is going to affect his blood sugar later, which means the nurse may need to check his blood sugar and adjust his insulin. So the nurse needs to know. Or maybe the alternate is a tuna fish sandwich. Sandwich is bread. Bread is carbs. Carbs. Yeah. Or maybe our patient has high blood pressure and is on a low sodium diet, and they don't like their tray. So we go get them an alternate that has canned green beans. Well, anything canned is high in sodium, and that's going to affect the blood pressure. So the nurse would need to know. But even beyond that, sometimes changes in appetite can indicate problems in overall health status. So if we've got somebody that's been eating well, and today isn't eating a thing, that's a change. What do we do with changes? Tell the nurse, because maybe the patient, let's say the patient has hepatitis and they're not eating well today. Well, that can tell me that their liver is not functioning. Everything is backing up, right? Because liver is essential to being able to process food. So everything is backing up. That's why they're not eating well. They're not hungry. So I may have to order some lab work to see what our liver enzymes are. Real problems and potential problems. So yeah, everything. I know, even something that small, like they don't want what they're eating today, that has to be reported to the nurse. Everything you know, the nurse should know. Now, you may have a nurse go, I don't care, whatever. That's okay. You told them. You reported it. It's okay. And it may not make any impact on the nurse right away. It may not be until 3 hours later when they see 2 other things and they put it all together and they go, oh. Whereas if they did not know about the food tray earlier, those 2 things may not have any impact. Right? So sometimes it's a package of symptoms that go together that tell us a story. Make sense? It's a very good question.
But you would, like, on the documentation, you would notate if you changed their meal or.
Yeah, in most cases, you can just tell the nurse. Hey, he didn't want this regular diet. I gave him an alternate. And the nurse may, okay, it may not be a big deal, but they filed that away for future. The other thing is, and this happens a lot more than I'd like it to happen. I have food preferences. I do not eat fish. I live in Florida. I do not eat fish at all. It is a serious texture issue for me, and it makes me sick. I always get sick after I eat fish. So not an allergy, but intolerance, right? So I don't eat fish. Okay, doesn't affect me at all. I'm very happy with my mooing and my clucking. That's fine. But if I go into a facility as a patient and nobody has asked me about my preferences, right? Then every Friday I'm likely to get fish. Am I going to eat that? Not a chance. So if I ask for an alternate, right? And you ask me as a CNA, is there something wrong with your tray? I'm going to tell you, yeah, I don't eat fish. Now, if you go tell the nurse, this patient doesn't eat fish, the nurse can then pass that on to dietary. And guess what? Next Friday, no fish. I am a happy camper now. So little things like that can improve your patient's experience. But if nobody asks me, I'm probably not going to volunteer that. I'll eat the veggies. I'll eat potatoes. Might even eat pears over here. I'm not going to touch that fish, which means I'm not getting protein. And muscles require protein to heal. So what do you think that's going to do if I'm not eating protein? What do you think that's going to do to my overall health if I have an illness or an injury? Yeah. So we really are what we eat. Isn't that amazing? Really are. So when I have patients that have injuries or illnesses, I'm working with dietary to bump up their protein intake. I may ask you to make sure you give them a protein shake every day or snack. If they're not eating well, we may have a shake with a scoop of peanut butter powder in it. And look, oh man, I can make you a Reese's peanut butter cup protein shake that would blow your socks off. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's what I'm trying to do is get protein into somebody who's not eating well. If peanut butter isn't your thing, I've got a strawberry shortcake recipe that is to die for. Okay. So I've got tricks up my sleeve, but I can't use those tricks if I don't know my patient needs them. I'm not going to be handing out protein shakes to everybody if I think they're eating well, because that's going to put more calories on, increasing the weight. And if I'm trying to heal an injury or an illness, I don't want that energy going to putting on weight. I need it going to healing, right? So I have to know. You see why you have to work so close with your nurses? Good, makes sense? All right. So there's one thing about this skill that is super hard. This is the hardest skill to be a patient for. I know we think care, which is coming up. I know we think, somebody in your personal space is a hard skill to be a patient for. Eating, being fed is actually the hardest skill to be a patient for. And it all has to do with psychology. Eating is the very first skill you become independent at. You learn how to hold a bottle long before you're sitting, standing, crawling, or walking. You learn how to pick up Cheerios and diced peaches off a high chair tray long before you can even recognize that you're hungry. Babies learn to get their hand to their mouth before they master anything else. This skill is so deeply ingrained in your psyche that when you lose the ability to feed yourself, it affects you psychologically in a very big way. Now, when you go home and you're practicing feeding ice cream to somebody at home, it's all fun and games, and because they aren't relying on that for like real nutrition, and it's all fun and games. When somebody is unable to feed themselves and they know that you are the only thing standing between them and dying, that changes the power dynamic in a huge way. Huge. So what we have to do is try to normalize this so that the power becomes more even. If you are in a position where you're stuff to do, right? Your patient is going to feel that. So they're not going to eat well, and they will eventually die. And it is a horrible death to starve to death. But they will do that to themselves because they do not want to feel like they're in position. This is all about psychology. This is the most important skill we learn. Now, one of the worst cases of abuse by a CNA is about feeding. Patients that are unable to physically feed themselves and have to rely on staff members, I have seen it multiple times. Staff members will come in, put the tray in front of the patient. They can see it, they can smell it. They are hungry and they want it. But then the staff member does not feed them and documents refused. That is psychological torture. That goes way beyond neglect. You guys understand that? When you have to feed a patient, if they're physically unable to feed themselves, you need to do a good job. You need to do it with the right attitude, and you need to do it until it's done. Does that make sense? It's sickening, some of the things that I've seen out there. That actually happened to my father-in-law. He was in the hospital, had a stroke. They kind of forgot to notice. I came in and he was very clearly suffering from a stroke. And his food tray was right in front of him, scrambled eggs. And he couldn't reach it. He couldn't get to it. He could not feed himself. He, and it's there. And it was just horrible. Don't do that. Okay, don't do that. So these are the things that the state test is trying to prevent from happening out there. That's why all of these rules exist. This feeding somebody, you guys all know how to feed somebody. I don't need to teach you how to feed somebody, but I do need to tell you all of this. Okay.
Teacher, if the patient can explain anything, he can talk. I can ask again and say yes with the eyes or no.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nonverbal is, a great way of communicating. So if they can point to what they want next. One blink for yes, two for no, if they can understand. But if you've got somebody with advanced dementia that is not able to communicate at all, this becomes a really, really hard skill, really hard. So let me okay, everybody eats different. Do you guys know that? Everybody eats different. Like some people don't like foods to touch on their plate. And if they do touch, they won't eat them. I'm funny and I can't have a salad on a plate with food. Like salad needs to be in its own separate container, right? A bowl, a plate. Yeah. Do not put my lettuce next to my mashed potatoes because that is just not going to happen. Okay. Everybody has different eating preferences. My husband eats all of one thing on his plate before he moves to the next. Like me, I'm taking a little bit out of everything. I won't taste it all, but he will. You don't move over here until you finished over here. Right? Some people eat their salad first. That's me. Salad is an appetizer. Other people eat their salad at the end of the meal because it helps with digestion. Cool. Some people like their corn and mashed potatoes mixed. Other people do not. So if you are a corn and mashed potatoes kind of girl, and you just automatically mix the corn and mashed potatoes kind of together, and then you got to feed that to somebody who is not a mixed person, that's going to be a problem with a capital P. So be careful. Don't assume that the way you eat is the way somebody else eats. Like I like Salisbury steak and mashed potato together on a fork. I think it's good. Somebody who doesn't like stuff mixed won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Okay. Don't assume that the way you eat is how somebody else eats. But there's one more thing about this. I'm going to tell you a story about this one. Puree. So if somebody has dentures, can't put them in or take them out, we don't give them their dentures. We just puree their food up, chop it up, right? So you end up with a plate that's got mounds of chopped up food. Now, puree is not supposed to affect the taste. It's the texture, which I would have a problem with. I'm a texture person. So you've got these mounds of pureed food on a plate. Now, a lot of times they'll put them in molds to make them look more like, which doesn't really help. That's okay. So I was a hospice nurse. I went into a nursing home to see one of my patients who had end-stage throat cancer, and she was in the nursing home. We knew she was, her life, she had run out of treatment options, so she was terminal. We knew she was going to pass from throat cancer. So I go in once a week and take care of any extra little things that need to be done, make sure her pain is under control and she's getting all the services she needs and everything. So I walk in and now understand she was with it, mentally 100% with it. She just could not speak. She had had surgery. She had had the blood vessels in her nerve were affected by the radiation, and so she could not speak. So I walked in and it's lunchtime, so everybody's in the dining room eating and being fed by CNAs and food attendants. And I walk down to the dining room and I see her sitting there. So I walk over and I say, "Hey, Mary, how's it going?" And she just kind of looked at me and shook her head and then looked at the tray in front of her and looked back at me. So I look at the plate. So I know she's like complaining about the food, right? Non-verbally, but she's complaining about the food. And she couldn't feed herself. She had some other health conditions, diabetes being one of them, and she was unable to hold the spoon, had no grip. So she's being fed by the CNA, and I look at the plate. And this plate has this gray goop. I mean, it's just like one big thing of gray. Like, I am not familiar with any gray food. So I look at the plate, I looked at the CNA, and I'm like, what are we having today? because what is that? And the CNA says, oh, I don't know. It's like Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes and beets, and I just mixed it all together because it's pureed. And I went, Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets. She says, yeah. I said, what do you think that would taste like mixed together? She says, oh, that'd be gross. Exhibit A. Yeah, it's gross. Beets should not be mixed with anything. Ever.
That one of a kind.
Yeah. I'm not even so sure they should be on the plate anywhere, but definitely not mixed. Okay, that's just not. I said, would you eat that? She says, well, God, no. I said, so why are you doing that? Why did you mix it all together? Why are you trying to feed this patient that? She says, oh, well, puree means no taste. No, bland means no taste. Pureed, full flavor, different texture. She's like, oh, that's gross. Yeah, let's go get some new trays. Let's try this again. Right? Don't assume anything. Don't think that you know what you don't know. Pureed is not bland. Every time I have Salisbury steak now, I think of beets. And that was like 15 years ago. All right. So is that good? Does everybody understand the rules for feeding? All right. So this skill is super easy. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. Do you feel like having a snack? All right. I'm just going to go wash my hands, pull up a chair, and I'll be right back. Would you like a clothing protector before we get started? Here's a hand wipe to wash your hands. I'm going to have a seat. Would you like a drink before we get started? And it looks like we have chocolate pudding here. I'm going to get some on the spoon, but as I'm feeding her, I'm going to be talking to her. So Miss Jones, we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to give her 2 or 3 half spoonfuls, let her have time to chew and swallow, offer a drink, and after bite 4, she's going to say, I'm done. I'm going to encourage her in 2 ways. Are you sure you don't want just one more? Can I get you something else from the kitchen? If you get hungry later, let me know. I'm going to clean everything up, remove the clothing protector if worn, do my closing, wash my hands, and then I'm going to document. Now, if you look at the documentation page in the middle of page 75, it's very small and hard to read. So keep your finger there, but go to page 121. On 121, the first documentation form there you can see is the food and fluid intake form. So this is a bigger version of what you have on page 75. You can use these to practice with, but you can see it's all based on percentage. So when we're documenting meals, it's going to be percentage. 100 means they ate it all. Clean Plate Club. 75 means they gave it a good effort, but they didn't get it all done. 50% means they ate about half. 25, they kind of picked at it. 0, they blatantly refused it. They didn't touch it at all. Okay. Liquid is kind of the same thing. 100%, they drank the whole cup. 50%, they drank half the cup. 0%, they didn't drink anything. And then you got 25 and 75 for those in betweens. Bless you. Make sense? But in order to document percentage, you have to know what you started with. If I told you that she ate an entire pudding cup, that sounds like 100%, isn't it? But what if I told you that that pudding cup was on a tray with a tuna sandwich, some potato chips, peaches, and the pudding cup, and she ate all of the pudding cup? Is that now 100%? No, it's based on what we start with. So when you're passing trays, you better pay attention to what patient started with to know how much of that to document that they ate. Good? Questions? All right, so if you look on page 74, there's a feeding documentation activity for percentage. So in that first column, toward the middle, I show you a plate. Starting meal, 3 slices of bacon, 2 eggs, 2 toast, and peaches. Well, that sounds good. So if you go to pick up the tray and there's nothing on the plate, how much did they eat? 100%. Number 2, out of the 3 slices of bacon, there's 1.5 left. Out of the 2 eggs, there's 1. Out of the 2 slices of toast, there's 1. And out of peaches, they ate some. How much of that did they eat?
About 50%.
Yeah, 50%. What about number 3? What do you guys think?
25.
How much, yeah, how much did they eat? Yes, opposite. Yeah, they ate 75%. Okay, and then number 4, they just kind of picked at it. Yeah, 25%. Good? Make sense? All right, now liquids, for the test, we're just going to do the same percentage. Okay, 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. So for the test, we have the same percentage. But in a clinical setting, we're going to go a step further and actually document the amount of cc's or mLs. We don't use ounces in medicine. We use cc's and mLs. That's the same, by the way. Cc's and mLs are the same. It's just 2 different words. Cc's and mLs. In order to do the conversion, 1 ounce is worth 30 cc's, equivalent to 30 cc's. So if you have 6 ounces of juice, you would multiply 6 times 30. What would that be? 180. Hi, come on in. 180. Yeah. Make sense? Oh, no problem. Come on in. All right. So on number 9, 6 ounces of juice, we just said was 180 cc's. Now the next one, the milk carton, it even tells you on the carton how many mLs there are. So if you multiply 8 by 30, what do you get? 240. Now, it's important to note, though, that most cartons are going to tell you how many mLs there are in that container. So your water bottle right there, if you look at the front of it, it'll probably say 500 mLs. Okay. So containers usually tell you how many mLs. And then you've got cups. So like your cup doesn't have mLs on it. Either does yours, either does your water bottle, either, does one of those over there. So you would have to know how many ounces that cup holds. So when you go to work, part of your orientation, they're actually going to tell you our coffee cups here are 6 ounces. So you would know that any time a patient drank a cup of coffee, 6 ounces is 180 cc's. This coffee cup is huge, 12 ounces. Man, that's my kind of coffee cup. So how many cc's would 12 ounces be? 360. At the end of your shift, you would add up all of the intake for the shift, all of the ounces that we converted to cc's. So if you add up 180 plus 240 plus 360, see if you can come up with a amount. 180 plus 240 plus 360. 780. So that is the total amount of intake for that patient that shift. Okay. Good. You will have a math question on the state exam. You will either have to convert ounces to cc's, or they will give you a whole bunch of intake and you have to add it up. So those two things we just did, converting ounces to cc's and then adding those totals up to get your grand total for the ship. You will have one of those two questions on the state exam. Good. All right, so let me show you this video because I don't have anything to feed anybody. So I'm going to show you this video and then we'll take a break. And then I'll show you the other two skills and you'll have practice time. The other two are way easier, way shorter. Now remember at the bottom of the page, page 75, it tells you you have, or you should be able to complete this in 9 minutes or less. So let me show you how long my video takes. 3 minutes and 44 seconds. So don't worry about running out of time. You have 3 minutes.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm for CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, let me get you a hand wipe so that you can wipe your hands. Take that. Thank you very much. Let me dispose of this. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yes.
I'll just place this on your chest. Okay, looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Delicious.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes.
Can I offer you a drink? Would you like something to drink?
Yes.
Ready for another bite?
Yes.
Ready for another bite? Are you sure you would like just one more bite?
Thank you.
Can I get you something else from the kitchen?
Okay.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later and we'll get something to eat. You have food available on hand.
Thank you.
Want to take a napkin? Yeah. I'll remove this clothing protector from you and we're going to put this in dirty linen. Going to go take care of your tray. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, you place the tray down on the table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call line is still in reach. Please let me know if you should need anything. I'm going to go wash my hands and documents.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient needs. And the amount of fluid they drank. Using my documentation form, I'll review the steps of my skill Make any corrections and tell the evaluator my skills done. Questions? Oh, he does not like to be fed. That video took like 7 takes.
It's not like feedback.
All right. Any questions on feeding a resident? Let's go ahead and take a break. Come back at 10 till. 10-minute break. And then we're going to get into the last 2 skills. Okay.
Nothing you would only do that if they were physically unable to do that.
Anybody that can feed himself.
For the test, you just have to like convert into PCs in your head, you're not allowed to have a calculator. Even in like political, you just have to convert your head.
You'll start to.
It'll be easy, I'm sure after a while.
Así es que, no.
Opiums. Okay, to start. Sí, I'm planning on becoming an OPM, right?
Sí, please. A mí me mandaron un email que tengo que chequear para, pero yo no sé si.
The OPMs at the facility I work, they earn good money.
Yeah, they do. Especially ones over there.
Like timber,
Mm-hmm.
I work at the Oaks Hill Rehab, the new one on Cortez.
Uh-huh.
They make better money than the nurses at the hospital. The LPNs.
Where?
They pay good.
Yeah, because they don't have RNs at that facility either. They won't pay a RN because they want more money.
Cortez Boulevard is by Wiki Watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But there's nothing where I work. LPN and RNs.
Then there's no RNs.
Right
If we need an RN, we have to call. They have to go out.
I work right there at
Mhm.
Timber Farm.
Timber Pines.
I work at Oak Hills. Senior living,
Uh-huh.
they have RNs there.
Yeah, but you guys pay better. You guys pay better than what they pay.
Really?
I'm getting ready to switch. If I wasn't moving, I would switch
To the CNA?
to Oak Hill as a CNA. Yep.
Yeah.
To the Cortez.
Because you only make $15 to $16 an hour over there as a CNA. That is it.
Y
And then-
Cortez,
Timber Pines,
no, en la otra one.
they pay $17 to $18 at Oak Hill. You make $18
I was CNA.
as a CNA at Oak Hill. They pay better,
And also that one thing.
but the benefits are good over here, but the benefits suck over there.
I know. Um,
But you get full benefits here. The first day you start, your benefits kick in.
They're not there. They're maybe after 90 days. I don't know, because
No, the very first day you start is when your benefits kick in.
I don't use insurance, health insurance there because I use my husband. So the 401k there is after 1 year.
Oh, theirs is the very first day you start, their 401 kicks in.
Really? And what
Yeah.
else? What else they have? They offer tuition reimbursement.
So did I.
I'm using it. Yeah, so they give me 5,000.
And for the student loan, they help.
They prepay the student loan, but you need to sign like a commitment.
Yeah, but you're gonna stay there 2 years.
2 years after you graduated.
Yeah, you have to stay there for 2 years. They pay half, but you don't have to stay.
Oh, okay. But I'm good there. It's hard. It's hard, right? You know, because you work there. It's hard work.
I continue in construction.
Hard.
It is hard work. We're constantly moving.
You need to have it.
You do have to have a heart for it, because if you don't, you're in the wrong. Now I'm beefing with the LPN over there.
Why? She's a strong or what?
If she don't like you, she tries to get you out of there, and she's trying.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
She told me I was ditzy and don't know what I'm doing. I said, I've been doing this for 10 years. What do you mean I don't know what I'm doing? I'm like, okay.
But it's hard. Yes. Yesterday I was trading by a resident without water now.
Oh, really? Mistake.
Dementia patient?
Actually, she wasn't, but then they said maybe she got a UTI.
Yeah, the UTI could set it off
What
too.
is
Yep.
UTI?
Urinary tract infection.
Oh, shit. Pero no tiene-
And an older person, they lose their balance and they go, they go crazy. Yeah, they go crazy.
Oh my God.
So they make her up.
See, one dementia patient went after my 2 coworkers, and as soon as she saw me, she was all happy. She knew who I was. She saw me and she's like, come. So I ran over to her and I was like, I calmed her down, got her, and she was great the rest of the day. And her husband like, what happened? I said, they said that she fought with the 2 other patients that worked 11 to 7 shift. I said, I came in at 6:30. I said, she was fine. I came in, got her up, gave her a shower, said she was fine. She was stuck by me like all day, like I was her daughter. She's like, come. So I was like, I got other patients. I can't just stay with you. I said, you sit here. I said, so I took her back to her room. I wheeled her back to her room and I put the TV on. I said, here, watch TV. And she says, no, don't leave them in. I was
Okay.
like, oh my gosh.
We all have stories. Something always happens.
So I was like, let me take you out to the kitchen. I'll get you something to eat. So I sat her down in the kitchen at the table and I gave her something to eat. She was fine. This is slapped. I was like, I hate when they give them the attitude because all they do is sleep all day long. I hate that. You can't get them to do anything. Then you try to feed them. Nope. They sleep.
Yeah.
And then husband's like, why is she on her Ativan? I told them at nighttime only. I said, well, they said she was combative this morning. I said, she wasn't combative with me.
It's hard.
I said, she was fine.
Depresión. Ansiedad. Ajá, sí. Lo van en la base. ¿Y qué hiciste? Ajá. Ir rápida, dice. No trata de calmar. Maybe la adrenalina solo sientes poquito. Lo bueno cuando lo sentiste. Sí, la puedo. Sí, no puedo. Sí quiero aprender todo. Y cuando me busco me para el 4 de julio. Y apenas estoy recuperando mi casa. Y no es que lo capto. Sí, mi mamá sí hizo que vivía increíble. Pero sí, lo quiero para mí. Vamos a camino. Y lo va a echar. Mira, pero no puedo. Pero no sé qué, nunca se porque no tiene chocolate y de mucho chocolate. Pero no se va a decir. Es que casi no es mucho de la silla, después no venimos. Sí, utila. Bueno, no me acuerdo. Me parecía que era como blue. Y yo me puse de altura, me como, bueno, oh, ay, mira, sí, súper bien. Johnson, la peor cosa. Una onza es igual a 30 60. O sea, muy bien. Entonces, esto, por ejemplo, de ahí la suma de esto, suma de esto. Y esta es la porción. Sí. Entonces, y eso es lo que estamos mucha gente se piensa no, yo tengo, pero qué cobertura si está internet, ya se me olvidó la vida.
I have a patient that leans and she connects it up straight, because we have these two little thingies, they're like triangle things to stick in a wheelchair to stop her from doing this, and she still leans. And we still have to feed her, so we just kind of sit her up and she just sits like this now when she eats.
Yeah, she may have some sort of a degenerative muscle disease, shortening the tendons that's causing her to do that.
Yeah, because when we try to change her, she's always so tight and tense, she's always like this. Even when we try to pull her hands apart to get her shirt on, she pulls the shirt and she holds on to it and she just sits like this and she smiles. That's everything she does is smile when we talk to her.
Yeah, because I don't know her specific, I can't give any.
Yeah, she's
Input
dementia.
because I
Yeah,
don't know
she's
what-
dementia. And actually, she's Alzheimer's stage. But she's just so bundled up and curled up.
Right, but I don't know what all of her other,
Yeah, what with her.
so there's no way I can give you specific information. about
Yeah.
the patient, 'cause I don't know.
Yeah. She just stays like that constantly.
So I paid for my background check yesterday and I thought I'd have to go to like the DMV or something like that. They have me going to the UPS store.
Right, right.
Is that normal?
Yes, locally, the best place for us to go is through Galantis, and it's a UPS store at Barclay.
Yeah, it was like Spring Hill. somewhere
Spring
like
Hill
that.
Drive,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the best place to go.
They can just do it right there, take your
Oh, yeah.
fingerprints and all that.
Yeah, they do it all right there. Other places in the area that do background checks, they either don't do the photo, or they don't transmit it electronically, or
So this one does all of them.
doesn't, yeah, that's why we recommend that one.
And then after I go, like it's set up for next Monday, so after I go and they do all that, then they'll send me an email.
They aren't gonna send you anything, they're just gonna send it to the clearinghouse. And then when you, you can register for the test 24 hours after that.
After I go and get that
Mhm.
done.
And then after, when you register for the test, they just go into the clearinghouse. and do that.
Okay.
So you wanna make sure you have a background check for them to sign
Right.
before, before you go get your, or before you register for the test. You can do it the other way around. You can register for the test, wait to get the email. Email says incomplete, you go get your background check. But that actually lengthens the process by about a week or so. So it's always best if you get your background check first.
And then when they give you the test date, is it gonna be like, is it soon or is it a week?
Yeah,
or two out, or-
it's usually about 2 weeks.
Okay.
They usually
So you
be
have a little
about
time
2
to
weeks.
study.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's usually, generally, I mean, it may be a little bit sooner than that if they've had some cancellations, or a little bit longer if they have high volume. Right now, it's trending a little bit longer just because Newport Richie closed.
Yeah.
So Tampa's having to absorb all of that traffic. So it's taking a little bit longer. All right, let's go ahead and get started. You turn in your skills book to page 50 for me. Page 50. Oh, no, you're fine. So the care plan, we haven't even got started, so you're good. The care plan at the top of page 50 tells us to transfer the resident from bed into a wheelchair. The resident is not able to walk or take steps. please underline take steps. We're going to come back to that in a minute. But the patient can stand with support. So they have strength, they can stand, they just cannot take steps. That's going to be super important to us in a minute. A gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident. The resident will stay in the room. So that's our care plan, pretty easy. We're just going to take a patient from the bed, put them in a wheelchair. Easy peasy. We're going to use a gait belt to make that happen. We have to talk a little bit about wheelchair safety, which I'm going to go over with you in a minute. And we're going to talk about body mechanics again. Remember we learned to ambulate with a gait belt? This is like ambulate with a gait belt. So we're going to put the gait belt on the same way. When the patient's feet hit the floor, we got to talk about their shoes. So that means we're actually going to put shoes on the patient. We're going to use that same body mechanics, 1 foot in front, 1 foot beside, and bend at the knees. So that's all the same. They're going to put their hands on your shoulders. That's the same. You're going to count to 3 to lift. That's the same. And when you pivot them around so that you're getting ready to sit them in the wheelchair, they have to feel that seat behind them. Remember when I helped the patient sit on Monday? I asked them to back up to the chair so they could feel the chair behind them before I sat them down. Remember? We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to lift the patient using the right body mechanics and pivot, but they've got to be able to feel that chair behind them before we sit them down. Now that's a whole lot of words. If I'm holding somebody up, that's a whole lot of words to pick them up, pivot them, and then ask them, can you feel the chair behind you? And wait for them to say yes. That's a long time for me to be holding somebody. So what I do is tell them, I'm going to lift you up and pivot you. When you feel that chair behind you, please say sit. So when I pick them up and pivot them, they feel that chair, they say sit, down we go. Okay, so if you give the patient like a code word, it can be any word you want. Now, sit, safe, I don't care what you use. But if you prepare them, it reduces the amount of time that you're trying to support them after return. Okay, good. So there's not a whole lot to learn here. I have to teach you about the wheelchair and I have to teach you how to pivot a patient to sit on the side of the bed. That's going to be the big learning for this skill. Everything else you already know. It's very, very similar to ambulate. So with wheelchairs, the wheelchair is usually kept in the folded position for storage. Gets it a little smaller. To open a wheelchair, there's no buttons to push or levers to pull or anything like that. You simply pull the wheelchair up off the floor a little bit, the big wheels to reduce friction. Just pull it up a little bit and then open it up. And not all of them open this easy. That wheelchair over there is a little bit stiffer, so it doesn't open all the way up. If your wheelchair only opens up about this far, you're going to have to open it the rest of the way by pressing down on the bars to spread that seat open. So if you have to do that, don't put your fingers down like this, because as the seat expands, it's going to pinch my fingers. So what you want to do is press down on the bars, but keep your fingers up out of the way. Okay, good. Wheelchairs are usually a little higher than other chairs. You can see that here. See how the wheelchair seat is higher than the chair? Well, that's on purpose, because the whole purpose, if I want to keep somebody stationary, I'll put them in a chair, right? Their feet are flat on the floor, supported, life is good. But if I'm going to move them somewhere, I need a wheelchair for that. So if I'm going to move them, I don't want their feet flat on the floor. I've got to move them. So wheelchairs are going to be higher. That makes sense. The problem is that when the wheelchair is higher, their feet are going to dangle. They're not flat on the floor on purpose. This edge of the seat is going to press up into the backs of the knees with the legs dangling. That prevents blood flow from going back up to the heart. So now we've got blood that stops. It's not flowing. Blood that stops always clots. So what are we at risk for?
Heart attack.
Okay, heart attack or blood clots that could travel. So when you have somebody in a wheelchair, we don't want their feet to dangle. There's health consequences to that. That's what leg rests and foot pedals are for. So these things actually come off of the wheelchair. They just set in place. So if you got somebody in a wheelchair, you need to make sure that it has leg rests and foot pedals. They just kind of sit on these little pegs here. Now, the leg rests and foot pedals, in order to move them into the right position, they just snap forward and lock in place. Just like that. The foot pedals would get folded down. Now I have something that's going to support the feet, keep the legs from dangling, and still make it possible for me to move the patient where I need to move them to. A lot of CNAs don't use foot pedals because they think it's unnecessary. It's very necessary to prevent long-term complications. Make sense? Okay, but you can't put a patient into a wheelchair with all of this in the way. They're going to trip. So before we put a patient into a wheelchair, we have to prepare it. We're going to fold the foot pedals up. Now these leg rests are locked in place. So in order to get them to swing out to the side, there's a little catch on the back. If I release the catch, they swing to the side. Now my wheelchair is open and able to be utilized by the patient. Good. So anytime you're taking a patient out of a wheelchair, everything should be out of the way. If you're putting a patient into the wheelchair, everything should be out of the way. When the patient is in the wheelchair, everything should be facing front and supporting the feet. And then we have brakes. Brakes are the most important part of the wheelchair. If you're walking away from the wheelchair, it should be locked, period. If you're putting a patient into a wheelchair, it should be locked, period. If you're taking a patient out of a wheelchair, it should be, period. Therefore, the only time this wheelchair should be unlocked is when it's actively moving. That's a huge deal on the state exam. You are going to have at least one question on making sure the wheelchair is locked on the written test. The reason that you have to make sure the wheelchair is locked is because floors are rarely completely level. Concrete floors in Florida, they have cracks in them because of settling. We build on sand. Wood floors in Florida get a lot of humidity and they warp, okay? There are very few fully level floors. So if I've got a body with weight in it, in a wheelchair that's not locked on an uneven floor, it's going to roll. And as it rolls, it's going to pick up momentum. And the only thing that's going to stop it is whatever it runs into, which could be another patient, could be a wall, could be down a flight of stairs. So we have to keep our patients safe. Wheelchairs must be locked unless they're currently in motion. Good. Now I'm harping on this for a reason. There are multiple videos on YouTube that tell you not to lock the wheelchair. Multiple videos. For some reason, some people out there have it in their brain that a locked wheelchair is a restraint. It is not. Patients can unlock that wheelchair, go anywhere they want. It is not a restraint. It is a safety issue. So make sure when you're watching videos, make sure you get the right ones. Because this skill is failed a lot on the state exam because of that. Good. Crazy. All right. So when you start this skill, the wheelchair is going to be open and the foot pedals will be in the open position when you get your care plan to start the skill. They're going to have a live patient laying in the bed. The wheelchair will be in the area, but not any particular place. Okay. So when you're going to do this skill, you have to pivot the patient around so they're sitting on the side of the bed. You're going to put some shoes on them. You're going to bring the wheelchair close and lock it. You're going to have the gait belt around the patient, lift them up, turn them around. When they feel the chair behind them, you'll sit them down, take the gait belt off, and then get everything put back in front where it needs to be. Make sure the wheelchair is locked when you leave them. This is a 3-minute skill, maybe. But if you look at the bottom of the page, how much time are they going to give you to do it? Oh my gosh. I mean, I could not just put them in a wheelchair. I could probably play some checkers with them in that amount of time. Don't rush this skill. You got lots and lots of time. But if you get this skill for the state exam, they are going to try to find somebody your body size or smaller, preferably smaller. They're also going to look for somebody that is able-bodied and somebody who has slip-on shoes. They're going to try to make this easy for you, okay? Because remember, you have to put shoes on for the test. So they're just going to try to simplify this as much as possible. So who has slip-on shoes? You have slip-on shoes, don't you? Do you tie those? You don't tie them? Okay, you're my patient. Come on over. Okay, come over to this side of the bed, and if you could just take your shoes off and put them on, just leave them on the floor right there, and then lay on your back in the bed. Go ahead and take your shoes off and drop them on the floor. There you go. Thank you. And then just lay down. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this skill. This is exactly how it would be set up for the state exam. Patient in bed, shoes on the floor beside the bed. Okay. Hi, Ms. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Good. I need to get you out of bed and into a wheelchair. Is that okay? I'm going to close your curtain. Let me go wash my hands. I'll be right back. I have clean hands. Remember, after your first skill, you're going to be able to simulate. So I'm going to get my gait belt. And I'm going to bring my wheelchair close enough to grab, but not so close that it's in my way. Because remember, I've got to get her sitting on the side of the bed. I got to get a gait belt on. I got to get shoes on. I got a lot to do over here. But once I get her sitting on the bed, I don't want to have to leave her to go somewhere to get the wheelchair. It's got to be within reach. Okay? Now, when you're going to pivot a patient or turn a patient so they're sitting on the side of the bed, you're going to do it in one quick movement. This is a pivot. Everybody does this wrong. I don't know why. When you're pivoting somebody, you're going to put your arm under their shoulders as far across. You want to try to hold that furthest shoulder if you can. This is the arm that everybody messes up. It does not go under the knees. This arm goes over the knees. So you should look like this before you pivot. This allows you to just swing. If you've got under and under, now you're trying to push while you're pulling, and that torques your back. Under the shoulders, over the knees. Got it? Okay. So I'm going to maintain a wide base of support. So my legs have to be at least shoulder width apart. And I'm going to lean against the bed to give me some torque. I'm actually going to use the bed to my advantage because it increases my strength.
Do you like the bed chair?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Not yet. Because I'm going to move it closer to me when I'm ready. Okay. So can you scoot your whole body closer to me? Good. Cross your arms over your chest and relax. I'm going to do all the work. Okay. So I've got wide base of support. I'm leaning against the bed for torque. I'm going to put my hand underneath her shoulders and over her knees. Relax. This is a good turn. 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, you can relax. Go ahead and move here. Okay, dizzy? No. Okay. All right. So now we're going to put shoes on, and for the test, you can put this. You're going to put the shoes on. If they're a little hard to get on, like I see hers are fit a little bit tight. If I have trouble, I can ask her to help. I worked out and my legs are killing me. Okay, I'm going to put this around your waist, and this is going to help me help you into the wheelchair. Okay, so you're going to put this around the waist, tag side in. Make sure it's not twisted. Let's do the first start. And you want it snug enough that you can only fit 4 fingers. Okay. Now I'm going to bring the wheelchair close. So when I say close, I mean close. There should be an inch between the patient and the wheelchair. 1 inch. That's how close. Do you remember I had you underline something?
They're unable to walk or take steps.
Unable to take steps. If I have the wheelchair here and I turn her around, in order for her to feel that wheelchair behind her, what's she going to have to do? What does care plan say she can't do? She can't take steps. So when I say close, I mean close. 1 inch between her and the wheelchair. And it needs to be at an angle. Okay. All right. All right, Miss Jones, you're going to put your hands up here. I'm going to pivot you around. I'm going to lift you up and pivot you. When you feel this behind your knees, say sit. Okay, so put your hands up here. And on the count of 3, we're going to turn and pivot. 1, 2, 3. So. Do you guys see how I did that? Do you see why I told her beforehand? Because I'm holding her weight up. If I have to wait and ask her while I'm holding her, it's going to kill me. Lift your arm up. Remember, we don't pull the gait belt from behind the patient. Now I need to get her legs on these foot pedals, but I can't. It's too close to the bed. They won't swing. So I'm going to unlock her. Go ahead and lift your feet up. And we're going to turn. And then I'm going to lock the wheelchair. Bring the leg rest forward. Now lift your foot and put your foot on the foot pedal. On this side, I'm going to lock the wheelchair. Bring the leg rest forward. We're going to lift your foot and put your foot on the foot pedal. Okay, good. Are you comfortable? Okay, can I get you anything else you want here? No. Would you like a magazine? Please. Okay, here's your call light. If you need anything at all, just press that blue button and I'll come help. This is going to be put away. That's part of cleaning my environment. I'm going to open the curtain, look around, wash my hands, get our magazine. Think about my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done. Thank you. Be careful getting out. So 3 minutes. They give you 11. Lots of time. All brakes are a little bit different on wheelchairs. These particular brakes, you pull back on the lever to engage. That one over there, you push forward on the lever to engage. It's one or the other, just you know, whatever wheelchair you're working with, make sure you know how to engage the brakes. All right, questions? Easy peasy. All right, we're going to move on to pericare. Go to page 110. This is not nearly as hard as everybody tries to make it. How do we know what to do with each patient? Care plan. So this particular skill, care plan tells us the female patient has been incontinent of urine and needs perineal care. The pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. This is a miracle. It does not happen this way. We are going to take the gift that they're giving us and be happy. Okay, normally, when you're doing care on an incontinent patient, we're going to be changing the gown, the bedding, the chucks under the, everything is going to need to be clean. The whole patient is going to need to be washed. I mean, this is, they're really simplifying this for us. If you look at the bottom of the page, you're going to see that this is a mannequin skill. Thank God for that. Mannequin skill. So the mannequin is not really peeing. The pad is not really wet. There's nothing really going on here. We're just showing that we understand the right technique. Okay. Do you guys remember clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away? You guys remember that?
Yeah.
I told you we were going to come back to that a little bit later in the program. Well, this is where we're going to come back to that. So I'm going to be talking to you about that in just a few minutes because we're going to use that to change the chucks under the patient. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. But before we get into the mechanics of how to do the skill, I want to talk a little bit about why. So if you go back to page 107, we're going to talk about incontinence, what it even means, and why should we care. Is it too warm in here for anybody? Everybody okay on temperature? Okay. All right, so a normal elimination system consists of two kidneys that filter blood 24 hours a day. So your kidneys sit in your back, kind of mid-back area, and all the blood in your body runs through those kidneys all the time. As the blood runs through the kidneys take out waste products. And that's what the urine is going to be made out of. So it takes waste products out of the blood, but does this 24 hours a day. Kidneys never stop. They're always working 24 hours a day. Never take a coffee break. 24 hours a day. So the blood goes through the kidneys pull out impurities and create urine. That urine drips down tubes called ureters into a Ziploc bag in your body called a bladder. That's all a bladder is it's a Ziploc bag. That's it. It just holds urine. This happens 24 hours a day. Drip, 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 drip. So if we didn't have this bladder, we'd be wet all the time because all these drips would just keep going out, right? Drip, drip, drip. Now at the bottom of a bladder, you have a valve. That valve is going to hold the bladder closed. That's its job. It only has one job. It just holds the bladder closed until the bladder gets full. When the bladder gets full, it rings a bell in the brain. Hey, we're full. The brain goes and finds a bathroom. You sit down and that valve opens. Urine comes out. When you're empty, the valve closes again. And now the bladder is going to hold your urine until it gets full again. Everybody good with that system? Pretty easy, right? We learned this in 5th grade. Pretty easy. When you're incontinent, that whole system still works. You still have kidneys. They still filter blood 24 hours a day, still produce urine, drip, drip, drip into the bladder. What's broken is the valve. So what I tell you would happen if that valve wasn't there or didn't work. Yeah, you're going to be wet all the time. Drip, drip, drip. Now, if you've got a patient who is wet all the time, they're incontinent. If you have a patient that is dry, 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 really, really wet, they are not incontinent. That valve is holding urine in the bladder. That is not incontinent. That is incompetent staff that doesn't want to take your patient to the bathroom. That is lazy. A lot of CNAs think, oh, it's just easier to clean them up. And they tell patients, just go, I'll clean you up later. How many of you guys, if I told you right now, bathroom's out of order, just go. Just pee yourselves, it's fine. It's fine. That's a dignity issue, isn't it? That is a independence issue, isn't it? Yeah. Do not ever tell a continent patient, just go for your own convenience. Thank you. That is horrible. It is criminal. And it is way more common out there than you would think. So this is something that, I don't know if you guys remember, early in the program, I talked to you about inspections, like state inspections. Every facility gets a state inspection once every 15 months and a federal inspection every 24 months, every 2 years. So you're going to have inspections. This is such a big issue that it's actually on state inspections. They look at when somebody comes into a facility, we have to mark down whether they're continent or not. And as they're in the facility, if they become incontinent, we better have a reason, like a documented medical reason with tests. Because if there isn't one, it's you guys. You made them incontinent just because you didn't want to take them to the bathroom. Isn't that horrible? Now, if the inspection finds that this has happened, they fine the facility $10,000 for every instance. I didn't say every patient. I said every instance. So you got somebody who is incontinent 3 times a day. That is a $30,000 fine. And you guys want to make more money, don't you? If the facility is paying money out in fines, you're not getting a raise because there's no money for it. So there's an incentive for you to make sure this is getting done right. Make sense? Isn't that horrible? I even have to go over that. That's horrible. But yet it does happen out there. CNAs will tell patients, just go, I'll clean you up later. It's easier. Because it's a lot of work to get a patient up out of bed, put their shoes on, walk them all the way to the bathroom, help them get undressed, sit them down, let them go. And we know they're slow because they're older and nothing is working right. So you're there for a while, then you have to get them up and get them cleaned up and pull their pants up and walk them back to the bed and get them settled again. It's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of work, but you're getting paid by the hour. Do the work. It's that simple. Don't sacrifice somebody's dignity. So they're looking for you to understand what incontinence is. There will be a written test question on understanding that incontinence means the valve that holds the bladder shut is not working. And your incontinent patient should be wet all the time. But adult skin is not like baby skin. Adult urine is not like baby urine. So we got a problem here. With a baby, you can put a diaper on a baby, put them to bed in the crib, and wake up 8-10 hours later, and they'll still have skin on their tushes, even though urine was up against that skin the whole time. That's because adult skin is different than baby skin. Adult urine is different than baby urine. Baby urine is very mild, very alkaline, very non-abrasive, because we feed babies controlled diets. The amount of acid in your urine is dependent on your diet. Well, babies get like baby food, which is bland. Have you ever tried baby plums? I mean, bland, right? So they don't have a lot of acid in their urine. Adult food, man, we got a lot of acid in our food and our drinks. That Dr. Pepper right there, ton of acid in it, a ton. That Gatorade, acid in it, yeah. That iced coffee, oh man, that's got some acid in it. Yeah, but that's okay because our bodies are designed to handle that. And whatever we don't need, it's going to excrete, which means we're going to have a ton of acid in our urine. That's how we maintain our kind of normal body chemistry, is we take what we need and we get rid of the rest, okay? So what do you think happens when you hold acid right up next to skin? Yeah, burns it. So when we have an adult patient who is incontinent, we need to understand that the urine that's right up next to their skin is going to have a consequence. So we are going to clean this patient every 2 hours around the clock. So if they're incontinent, we're cleaning them at 2 a.m. Yes, we're waking them up, cleaning their bottom at 2 a.m. and at 4 and at 6 and at 8 and at 10. Do not do your patients any favors and let them sleep through the night. Because when they wake up the next day, they're not going to have skin on their bottom and they're not going to sleep for the next 3 months while we try to heal it. Don't do any favors. Good? Good. Now, the thing is that for the most part, most of the time, we don't have to have incontinent patients. We can actually retrain that valve. It's a muscle, like any other muscle in your body. With enough work, we can get it working again. But we have to take the patient to the bathroom every 2 hours around the clock. So that means when we're waking them up at 2 to clean them, we're also taking them to the bathroom. But if you do that, it takes about 3 to 5 days to retrain adults. You can save their skin. You can also save their dignity. So you will have patients on toileting schedules. It is super critical that you follow that toileting schedule. Don't go on break. Go, yeah, I'll get it when I get back. No, this is a schedule on purpose. Does that make sense? So bowel and bladder retraining means that we have scheduled toilet visits to regain control of urination. That will be a written test question. Okay. That's why I have to go over all this with you, because a lot of the written test is going to be about this topic. So how often are our incontinent patients going to be wet? How often are they going to be wet? All the time. And we're going to change them and clean them every 2 hours. Very good. Very good. Now, when you turn a patient that's incontinent, understand that, remember, the bladder is a Ziploc bag. So if you're laying down, some of that urine is just going to kind of hang out in the bladder, you know. So when you turn the patient on their side to clean them up, what's going to happen to that urine? It's going to come out. It's positional. So when you get the patient cleaned up and turn them over to clean their backside, they're probably going to pee. Don't get upset. They can't control that. It's okay. Just keep cleaning. I bring this up because we had a situation down in Clearwater. There was a male caregiver that did not understand incontinence at all, didn't know what it was. And when he turned the patient over to clean their backside, turned the woman over to clean her backside, she peed because it's positional. He got offended, felt he was disrespected because she peed on him and beat her to death. To death. Because he was disrespected. It's gravity, dude. Your problem is with gravity. So we need to have an awareness of what's going on here physiologically. Right? And please do not beat your patients. I don't think I should have to say that, but it happens. Okay. One other thing about this is that we have to understand the risk for infection here. So your bladder is warm, dark, moist. What do we know about warm, dark, moist? Yes, things grow. Absolutely. Warm, dark, moist. Now, your bladder also has the added benefit of having an open bar and an all-you-can-eat buffet. So every bacteria in the world is trying to find a bladder to get into. Everyone. And I'm not exaggerating that, okay? Because there's proteins in the urine that bacteria can use to multiply. And there's enzymes in the urine that help make that procreation easier. So open bar and all you can eat buffet really does sum that up. So if a bacteria gets into the bladder, it's much more likely to be able to multiply. Now, in our urethras, or the tube that goes from the bladder to the outside world, that tube, in ladies, it's only about as long as your pinky. That's it. That is not far for bacteria to travel. That's like a day trip, right? Bacteria can easily get it, especially if they know that at the end of this road is like nirvana, right? They're motivated to get up this tube. Now we've got a few bodyguards and bouncers in the area, some white blood cells that as long as the bacteria just show up one or two, they say, hey, you don't belong, get out. Okay, so we have some white blood cells in the urethra to help protect against invasion. And that works as long as we're not bringing bacteria up by the busload. But if you have an entire busload of bacteria, they get through the door, man, all bets are off because your bouncers aren't going to be able to get to all of them. So when we are cleaning, we have to be careful not to bring bacteria by the busload to the urethra. So the way we wipe counts. We always wipe away from the urethra. So we're going to start at the top, which is where the urethra is, and go down and then away. Now, do you remember the thieves method that we learned? Right, we take a washcloth, fold in the two corners, and we use the top area here to clean something. And then we fold that down to trap the contamination underneath. We use this area to clean and then fold it down. Use this area to clean and fold it down. Use this area to clean and fold it down. You guys remember that? Okay, we're going to use that for pericare. We're going to go down the middle. So urethra is at the top, vagina is in the middle, rectal area is at the bottom. Our bacteria around our rectum. So when we go down, we're going to pull away and fold over. Do not go down and then back up.
I'm spreading.
That's right. Bus loads. So top, down, move away, fold over. So we're going to go right down the middle. Then we're going to go on the outside. Skin fold, because we're trying to reduce the acid that's up against the skin. So skin fold that over, skin fold that over. We call that labia, the outer area of the vagina. Those are the labia. So we're cleaning the labia. Remember, top to bottom and then move away, fold over. Never go back up. Then we have the crease between the leg and the groin, that groove, that crease. We want to clean those because we don't want acid in that. Remember, warm, dark, moist. Now we got acid. That's not good. So we're going to clean down one skin fold that over, and the other skin fold. So middle, side, side, skin fold, skin fold. Different leaf for each. Never go back up. Good? Okay. So anything we wash, we rinse. Anything we rinse, we. So we've just learned how to do this. Middle, side, side, skin fold, skin fold. We're going to rinse it the same way and just dry from top down, pat dry. But your patient is laying on a pad. That pad is wet with urine. That means their butt is laying on urine. We have to clean the butt. So we're going to turn the patient over. When we clean the butt, we're going to go from the rectal area up the center crease. Remember, you never want to go toward the urethra. So we're going to start at the rectal area, go up the center crease. We're going to fold our washcloth. We're going to clean a cheek, fold a washcloth. Clean another cheek, fold a washcloth. And we're going to go up that center crease one more time because it's kind of like a riverbed. It's going to direct the urine. So we want to get that again, just to make sure that it's nice and clean. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever rinse, we dry. Good? Questions? All right, but let me talk about that pad real quick. When the patient is out of bed in the community, doing whatever it is that they're going to do, we're going to use an adult brief. We don't call them diapers. These aren't children. We call them adult briefs. Some patients also call them depends. That's fine, but not diapers. But adult briefs are plastic lined, right? Because we don't want urine to get out, so they're waterproof. And they're going to hold in body heat. So you end up with warm, dark, moist. Are you starting to see that you should be looking everywhere for warm, dark, moist because it's going to hide, right? We're looking. So we know the inside of that adult brief is the ideal environment. We don't like that. Warm, dark, moist. So when the patient is out of bed and wearing an adult brief, we're going to clean and change them every 2 hours around the clock to try to minimize the acid. But that's not ideal. When they're in bed, there's a better way. No adult brief. Open to air on a pad. That allows the urine to be pulled away from the skin, so you don't have that skin on skin or skin on acid contact. But it also lets light and air circulate, so it reduces the amount of bacteria. Not all patients will be open to air. Some patients are uncomfortable with being open to air. Is that ever your decision? No. Whose decision is that? The nurses. So if the patient tells you that, what should you do with that information? Just tell the nurse. This patient is open to air on a pad. So we're going to clean and change the pad. Good?
That means they're
not wearing an adult brief. Open to air. That's actually much healthier for the skin. Not everybody is comfortable with that. So we have to take into account our patient's comfort level. But it is much better. You'll have way fewer infections. I mean, way fewer infections. So a question I get asked a lot is, well, if the patient's incontinent, why don't we just use a catheter? Why can't we just use a catheter? Well, a catheter is like a secret tunnel. Remember I said we've got a few bodyguards and bouncers hanging out in our urethra that if bacteria come up, they're able to find them and get rid of them before they can invade and cause a problem. When you put a catheter in there, the bouncers are on the outside of the tunnel, not inside, which means bacteria Yeah, just straight shot, man. Zoom right in. And along the way, they're going to multiply because they have access to urine. And it blocks out light. You know, warm, dark, moist, fresh food supply. So by the time the bacteria jump out of the catheter into the bladder, there's like a couple 100 trillion of them before they even get to the bladder. And now they have unrestricted access. So patients with catheters tend to get urinary tract infections that are very, very hard to heal and can easily progress into septicemia, blood infections. So catheters are not used if we don't absolutely positively need a catheter. This urine's coming out on its own. I don't need a catheter to get that urine out. It's coming out just fine. It's much better just to clean the skin than to risk killing the patient. Catheters kill about 2,500 patients a year. That's big numbers. So unless we need a catheter, we're not going to use one. Okay, good. Let's talk about the pad for a second. So your patient's open to air on a pad, peeing, because that's what happens with incontinence. So that urine gets on the pad. What temperature is the body?
98.6.
Okay, 98.6. Our urine is made up in our furnace area. Okay, so it's even warmer. Urine is about 100 to 102 degrees when it comes out. That urine is going to hit room temperature air. That room temperature air is going to cool that urine down to about 75 degrees. Now, what do you think your 98.6 degree skin is going to think about that 75 degree urine? It's going to be cold. So that pad is going to feel cold, wet, slimy. If you were laying on that pad, what's the first thing you'd want done? Yeah, change it. So for this skill, we're going to change that pad before we ever clean the patient. Get them on a dry pad. But we got a dirty butt on a dry pad right now. So we're going to clean the front, we're going to clean the back, and then we're going to put a clean pad under the patient.
You can change it twice.
Change the checks twice. Yeah. It's the only skill where we have to change twice, but do you understand why? Okay, that pad is uncomfortable. We got to get it changed. And then clean body deserves a clean pad. Now, thankfully, our care plan says we don't have to do anything with the gown. We don't have to change sheets. We don't have to. I mean, they're making this ridiculously easy for you. You change the chucks, you clean the front, you clean the back, change the chucks again. That's it. All of our washing rules apply. If we're going to get water, we check it. And who else checks it? The patient. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. Don't get your surface wet. So in this case, we have a chucks under the patient. Don't put soap in the basin. We're going to put soap on the washcloth. Make sure you wring out your washcloths really well. We don't want a lot of drippiness going on in here. It's uncomfortable. If our patient's uncovered or undressed, what do we need? Privacy blanket. We are in the no square. Do I need gloves? Yes, absolutely. We do our opening at the beginning of every single skill. We do our closing at the end of every single skill. You know this skill, people. You know it. I'm going to show you what it looks like, but you already know everything you need to know to do the skill. You just haven't seen it put together yet, but you know all of the components. You've already done every one of these steps before. Okay. Does that make it easier when you're learning a new skill to know that you already know each small part of the skill? Does that make it easier? Okay. Every skill you will learn as a CNA out there, all additional skills, you will be using every one of these principles again. You'll be going, oh yeah, I know that. Oh, I know that. These are nursing foundation fundamentals. This is universal. So it may not be in these words, but you'll be like, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. So it's not going to be so foreign and scary to learn new things. You already have a foundation to build on. Okay, good. Now, this is a mannequin skill. You're going to talk to the mannequin like she's a real person, though. So explain to her what, don't ever be in somebody's personal area unless they know why you're there. They're going to think you're sightseeing. Okay. So you need to make sure you explain. I'm going to pull the blanket up and expose you now, but I'll make this as brief as possible. I'm going to turn you on your side so I can clean your backside. Expose them for the least amount of time possible. So be quick about this. Don't just, don't roll the blanket up, have them exposed, and then go get the water. Would you want to lay there? Briefest amount of time possible. Keep your patient covered whenever possible. Okay. So that's just kind of common sense, but you'll get caught up in the steps of the skill and you'll forget that. Never forget to look at your patient. Okay. I am going to show you the video for this one because it's got really good close-ups, and I think you need the close-ups for this particular skill. Okay. Questions? So everything I just talked to you about was on page 107 to 109. Remember that incontinence can be bowel and or bladder. So you can have bladder incontinence, which is what we've talked about so far, and you can have bowel incontinence, and you can have both. It's just having one doesn't necessarily mean you would have the other. Thank you. The evaluators will play the voice of the mannequin for you, so they will talk back. And trust me, those evaluators want to be comfortable with what you're doing, so make sure you're talking. But when you're cleaning the backside, you're going to need both of your hands. The mannequin doesn't stay on her side very well by herself. So the evaluator, one of them is actually going to hold that mannequin on their side. You'll see that in the video. You'll see a hand that just kind of appears from nowhere. That's the evaluator. Or in this case, my husband. You got 17 minutes to do the skill according to your book. It takes 11 minutes according to my video. And remember, I've got this whole intro and credits, so it's actually maybe 10. Lots of time, guys. Don't rush.
Hi, Ms. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need you to hearing care. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my clean supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overbed table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 cups, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel. I'll place these items on the overbed table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. I'll make sure it's warm. Not hot, not cold, just warm. Ms. Jones, would you like to check the water temperature to make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place my washcloths in the water. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is gonna help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm gonna spread the blanket out, be careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm gonna pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now we'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, hold it up lengthwise and roll it toward me. And I'll repeat that with the center one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Now I'll get my gloves on. Okay, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me. And we're gonna roll you onto your left side so I can change the chucks that's under you. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Miss Jones, can you scoot for me, please? Thank you. Roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one and tuck it under the soil. Miss Jones, can you roll back onto your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll cover us to the other side of the bed now. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove the soil chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Miss Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up. And on the way, I'm going to try to get that down rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the period area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel. And then get my first washcloth. I'm going to write this out. And sew 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her period area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom. And then we'll fold that over. We're going to clean the outside, labia, top to bottom, down one side, and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is going to clean this area between the leg and the groin, the skin fold, top to bottom. We're going to fold that over, and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place the washcloth back on here. The second washcloth, we're going to wring out. And we're going to rinse all of those areas the same way we washed. So we're going to hold her slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle pat. I'm going to unroll the blanket, which will place her gown back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scoot you toward me now. We're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. Go ahead and scoot toward me. And we're going to roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the blanket in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the fourth washcloth, wring it out really well. And we're going to sew 4 corners. 1, 2, right up the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean one buttocks. We're gonna fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttocks. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the anal opening up the center crease one last time. We're gonna set that aside. Whenever we wash, we rinse. So I'll bring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we washed. So from the anal opening up the center crease, fold that over. One buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to change that pad out for you. So you're on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soil checks for the patient and cut it under her head. Unroll the clay checks. And tuck it under the soil. Michelle, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle.
Notice I'm only touching the outside of the blanket, not her or her sheet. My gloves are soiled.
1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soil checks from the bed. And unroll the plate. Okay. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Michelle, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in 30 minutes. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same way we clean everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Then the basin. Pick it up with a paper towel and dry the inside. We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside. And discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the stove. We'll use the paper towel to open the door and store the basin back inside. These paper towels will now be thrown away. Barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I'm going to do my gloves. Okay, Michelle, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back on.
So when I
So like the
get
privacy
the blanket
blanket
out,
will
we
take
take
from the bottoms or underside of the blanket. Pull the sheet out. And ball the blanket out into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Michelle, so we don't put this in dirty linen. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you along here, like a magazine? Okay, here's your phone. If you should need anything to call, please let me know. I want you to open your purse and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know my skill is done.
You got the lights for me, please? Okay, any questions on pericare?
I know we're talking about mercury products, but when it's bound buttons, I assume you don't use washcloths, you use like.
No,
wipes.
actually, you can use washcloths and it's the exact same process. It depends on your facility as to what you're going to use. So that would be addressed in their policy and procedure. So some facilities will use wipes, others will use washcloths. Now, the reason that wipes aren't used in every facility is because wipes are a disposable item, which means it has to biodegrade somewhere. And it just contributes to the landfill issue where washcloths can be bleached, washed and bleached. So a lot of places opt to be a little bit more sustainable and use washcloths.
I just think that would make it less.
Yeah, but again, you're going to use that same leaves method. You just may need additional washcloths. Yeah.
Carry through things that come in, like a case and they come fast and rip off the plastic and they disintegrate it. So
It's like this little.
yeah, that's what
Yeah. Every facility is going to have a little bit different process. Go by your policy and procedure for whatever your facility uses, and then they'll modify it on the care plan based on that patient's need. But yeah, I mean, before wipes were a thing. So long before we had wipes, we were, we used washcloths. Now, one thing that's not on the test, but tuck this away for future use, future knowledge. So this is an old nursing trick. If you have feces that, and you're talking about Valentine's, right? You have feces that maybe has dried on the skin, body heat, 98, it's going to dry out feces. So if you have feces that's dried on the skin, instead of trying to scrape it off or scrub it off, a little bit of shaving cream on that area helps break those bonds. So then the feces just wipes off. But it can't be like the gel shaving cream. It's the old Barbasol in a can, white foam stuff. Just a little bit of shaving cream on the area, let it sit for 20, 30 seconds, and whatever's on the skin will wipe right off. Again, you have to ask the nurse, because if we have any open wounds, we definitely don't want shaving cream near there. So you would want to check with the nurse to find out, what's allowed. Okay. But that's a old nursing trick, and man, does it work. Does anybody have any questions about today's topics? You go back and look at, these review sheets from class 1 and class 2. If you just take a minute to go back and look at it, you'll probably realize that they're really easy now.
Go over this because I just had a few ones that I had questions.
Sure. What questions?
12 and 13.
I don't have it in front of me. Let me grab it. Try to print off something for you guys. There's a job fair. Let me tell you guys about. Okay, so 12 and 13. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you about the technical term. So 12 is patients who are incontinent or at risk of UTIs, urinary tract infections. And that's because of that bacteria. I told you about the bacteria. I just forgot to tell you the term. It's called a UTI, urinary tract infection. And I didn't go over this though. Confusion is often the first sign of a UTI in the elderly. Confusion. Mhm. So when we're younger, I can't print this, I'm just gonna tell you about it. When we're younger and we get a urinary tract infection, we know we got a UTI because you get pain, frequency, burning, urgency. It's like you feel like you can't get out of the bathroom, but when you're in the bathroom, nothing's happening. You know, it's very obvious. But as we age, we actually lose those symptoms. You don't get pain, you don't get frequency, you don't get urgency, you don't get burning. So you have nothing to tell you that you got a urinary tract infection, which means it doesn't get treated, which means those bacteria just keep building, and it ends up affecting all of the body, including the brain. So usually the first sign is confusion.
You're not sure what's happening.
Yeah. So when you've got somebody, and this is where that continuity of care becomes important. If you're taking care of the same patients all the time, you get to know your patients. And if you know Miss Annie is normally pretty with it, and today she's not, she doesn't know where she is or why she's there or where the dining room is, and she's been going to the dining room for 6 years now. What do you mean you don't know where it's at? That should be a clue to you that something is very wrong. Don't just assume, oh, she's getting older and she's just confused because of age. Confusion because of age never comes on suddenly. It goes from, I can't remember where I put my keys. I can't remember why I walked into this room, to, oh, I forgot to pay my light bill, to, I forgot that I made dinner and it's still cooking on the stove. Okay, it's a progression. It takes a long time. Confusion in elderly is not normal. So don't just assume, oh, she's confused today, she must be getting old. That's not a good assumption. Make sure you report it. First thing the nurse is going to do is say, go get me a urine sample. Go get me a urine sample. So then you got to help her pee into a cup. Good luck. Any other questions? No. Yeah, go back and review the review sheets from the first couple of classes, and you'll see just how far you've come. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of other things on Monday, but I don't have a whole lot to show you. Catheter care, we've already talked a lot about, you know, that catheters have an increased risk of infection because it conceals bacteria from the body's defenses. I'm going to show you what a catheter is, how it works, and how we take care of it, but washing rules all apply. I mean, all of our same rules apply. We still use the leaves method. I mean, nothing ever changes. But I do want to talk to you very briefly about delegation, and then I'm going to open this up for practice. So along the way, as you go through your career, there may be additional skills that you may need to learn. That's called delegation. Now, there's only two things that CNAs need to know about delegation. Number one is, have I been trained to do this task? Okay. So if you haven't been trained, if I tell you to go change an ostomy bag in room 210 and you've never been trained on changing an ostomy bag, then you cannot do that skill. You haven't been trained. So training doesn't have to be in a classroom. That doesn't have to be formal like this. Training can be at the bedside, you know, just with a nurse showing you what to do and then watching you do it to make sure you got it. Doesn't have to be formal. but you do have to be trained. We can't just say, figure it out or go watch a YouTube video. I mean, that's not the way training works, okay? So you have to be trained. The second thing that you have to worry about is it on the care plan for this patient? So this gets us in trouble sometimes as CNA. So let's say that you are working in a same-day surgery center and you're working in post-op. This is after the patient has surgery, but they're getting ready to go home. And I've trained you on taking out catheters because patients get catheters to have surgery, and then after surgery, we take them out and they go home, okay? So I've trained you on how to take out a catheter and how to make sure the patient's peeing afterwards, because that's a concern. And you've been doing that for 3 years. And now you have moved to the hospital and you're now in the mother baby. Now, you've been trained, you know how to take out catheters, but that doesn't mean that this patient needs their catheter taken out. It has to be on the care plan. So sometimes when CNAs get additional training, they forget about, they just start making decisions, about when because they know how to do the skill, when it should be done. Remember that you can't make decisions. So when somebody asks you to do something, your first question to yourself is, have I been trained in this? The second question is it on this care plan? Now, remember, care plans can be verbal. As a nurse, I can ask you to do something. Doesn't have to be written down somewhere. I can ask you. You are a nursing assistant. So I'm not going to write everything down. I just may ask you to go do. That's fine. But you can't decide on your own that something needs to be done. Make sense? Good? Okay. Now, from a nursing standpoint, so that's from a CNA. We've only got 2 questions to worry about. Have I been trained? Is it supposed to be done on this patient? From a nursing standpoint, I have 5 questions I have to look at before I can delegate something. And one of those questions is, have you been trained? Okay, so I've got to make sure you've been trained to do that task. But I also have to make sure that it's a task that's within my scope of practice. Like, I don't know how to put chest tubes in, so I certainly can't delegate that to you. Okay, so I gotta make sure, is it in my scope of practice to delegate it? So have you been trained? Is it delegatable? Is it in my scope of practice? Is the patient stable? Now, I gave you a statement early in the program that CNAs do routine tasks on stable patients to free nurses up to do advanced tasks on non-stable patients, right? You guys remember hearing that? Okay, so I have to make sure that this patient is stable for you to do the task on. So let's say that you know how to draw blood. You went to class, you took a phlebotomy class, you're certified, you've got, you know how to draw blood. That doesn't mean that you can jump in and draw blood on a patient that's currently coding. Not a good time. So is the patient stable? I also have to make sure that you don't require any judgment. So when I delegate something, I can't say to you, okay, go ahead and take the catheter out of that patient and see if they can pee. If they can't pee, go ahead and straight cath them and see how much residual is left. Now, even if you know how to straight cath, even if you've been trained to do that, that requires judgment. You have to figure out, did they pee or not? There's a question there that has to be answered before you do the task. You're not allowed to answer questions, therefore, that is an invalid order. I can tell you, take the catheter out, let me know if they pee. Now, if they don't pee, then I assess, and then I can ask you to straight cath the patient. Do you understand that the decision cannot rest with you? Okay, so no questions. So, have you been trained? Is it a delegatable task? Is the patient stable, and does it require judgment? Those are 4 of my questions. My 5th question is more along the lines of, have I prepared you to do this skill? Have I given you everything that you need? Do you know what supplies? Do you have access to the supplies? Do you know what to look for? Do you know who to call in case of a problem? So have I given you the support to do this skill? So there's a lot going on the background as a nurse, because remember, even if I delegate that task to you, who is still legally responsible for it? Yeah, 100%. So it's in my best interest to make sure we're both playing in the same ballpark. Because I'm the one that's on the hot seat.
I have a question about the chapters. I thought that only the RNs can do that, but CNAs can do that with additional training.
Depends on your setting. Okay, so when it comes to delegation, that was my next thing. When it comes to delegation, there's a whole nother level here. So I've just talked to you from the CNA standpoint, 2 questions, from the nurse standpoint, 5. But then you've got one more layer here. So delegation is not easy. Okay, you guys need to understand that. And I'm sorry, there's 2 more layers. Delegation is not easy. So we have CNA 2 questions, we have nurse 5 questions, and then you have facility. Now the facility is going to figure out what tasks they deem delegatable. So they're going to have a list of things that nurses can delegate, things they can't delegate. The nurse has got to make sure that they're in compliance with whatever the policy and procedure is for those tasks. So the facility is going to dictate what's allowed and what's not, because ultimately, yes, the nurse is liable and can't be sued, but does that nurse really have any money? Yeah, who has the money? The facility. So when a patient sues, they're not suing the nurse, they're suing the facility. So the facility is looking to decrease their risk, their exposure. So they're going to develop policies and procedures to help mitigate their risk. So they're going to say, yes, you can delegate this, but no, you can't delegate that, to help minimize their risk. And then you have one more level, and those are the state statutes. State statutes are going to dictate what is delegatable and what is not, from a statutory. Now in Florida, our state statutes are like, we really don't want to touch this. We're going to leave it up to the other parties involved. So in Florida, if you look at the state statutes, it's chapter 64, it's the Nurse Practice Act. But if you look at the statutes for CNAs, it goes over everything we've gone over. Things like your ADLs, dressing, bathing, grooming, toileting, feeding, mobility. So all the ADLs, vital signs, and other nursing tasks as assigned. So that means that they're pretty much leaving it up to the employer and the nurses, because CNAs can work in a wide variety of places. So if you're going to go to work at, Chris River Health and Rehab, they just emailed me. I'm going to give that to you in a minute. So you got to work at Chris River Health and Rehab because they're giving out snow cones and popcorn later this month. And so you sign on with them. And I know that's not really a good incentive. Let's step this up a little bit. But they are doing a raffle for TV and AirPods and stuff. But so you got to work for them. And let's say that your previous job where you did work, you worked in dialysis. Now in dialysis, when you're working as a CNA or a patient care tech in dialysis, you're going to be trained to take blood. I mean, that's what dialysis is. We're taking blood out of the body, putting it through a machine, and right to where it basically the machine is the kidney. So we're taking the blood out of the body, putting it in the machine, cleaning the blood, and then putting the clean blood back in. It takes about 4 hours. But before we get started, we have to do some labs to see where we're at, because we don't want to go too far. So you're going to be trained to take blood from that patient, put it into this machine, look at the printout, give it to the nurse, and the nurse will tell you what settings to put on the dialysis machine. Good? So that's what you used to do. You know how to take blood. But now you're at health and rehab, Chris River Health and Rehab, because of snow cones. And we have a lab order. It just cracks me up. We have a lab order that the patient needs lab work, and you're like, oh, I can do that. So you go in, grab some tubes, and you just take the blood because you knew how to take it over there. Well, that facility does not allow you to take blood. That is not in your scope of practice, even though you know how, it's not in your scope of practice for that facility. They aren't willing to accept the risk, the liability. So they hire an outside lab agency to come in to take labs. So do you understand that this is, delegation is a very complex thing. It's not just you. It's you with 2 questions, the nurse with 5 questions, the facility with 10 questions, and the state statutes with everything else. So by the time this delegation thing gets all the way down to you and you're just at your little 2 questions, do I know how? And is it on the care plan for this patient? Like, I'm not making this up myself to do. You know, it's already gone through so many checks and balances that it's okay. Make sense? Good. And I have known nurses that overstepped their bounds and delegated things that weren't part of facility policy. And that's on the nurse. It's not on you. It's on the nurse. But this is why that policy procedure manual really should be part of your orientation. You really do need to know what that book says. Everybody looks at me nuts. I have never read a policy procedure book. I didn't either. When I was out there working, I didn't either. It's not until I started getting into the legalities of this that I realized just how important they are. And then I started writing policy procedure manuals. And that's when everything started to click. It's all started to come together. It's like, oh my gosh, I have been playing with my license for years. It's very scary. Make sure you know what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do in that facility. Good. Questions? Do you guys understand delegation a little bit more? All right, the rest of the class is just practice. You got 40 minutes. Grab a mannequin, grab a partner, grab a skill. Anybody that doesn't want to practice, you are free to leave. I cannot keep you. You are adults. There's the door. But I will caution you, if you're not practicing here, practice somewhere. You do not want the first time you do a skill to be for the test. That is not a good idea. You will make mistakes when you first start. You will. I mean, there's no way around it. You don't want to make mistakes on the test. So make sure you're practicing somewhere. Super important. 17. It's also up here in the yellow.